7:03 is the time. Here's a very strange feeling that I have bubbling away inside me. No need to call the nurse at this point in proceedings. And I don't know how your brain works. I was looking at some coverage in some newspapers, and happily it's given us an unhinged headline of the successful capture of what's called a shadow tanker, a Russian shadow tanker, an extraordinary bit of daring do undertaken by the British military, and hopefully a taste of things to come when it comes to standing up to Russia and their hideous attempts to circumvent sanctions and international law. And it occurred to me that, God, some people work hard to see the negative, don't they, in good news. You can't, I mean, I'll give you some more examples of it shortly, but you can't ever admit that somebody to whom you are politically opposed or about whom you have reservations, you can't ever admit that they've done something good. It's a doozy of an unhinged headline. I'll share that with you a little later in the programme, but Royal Marine Commandos and officers from the National Crime Agency literally took control of a vessel in the middle of the sea in the early hours of Sunday morning. I mean, with complete success, no casualties, and absolute success. But hey, someone will find a negative. And I don't think it would be quite as pathetic to look at what Keir Starmer has announced this morning and think, who can we find who says no, who doesn't like it? Because there will be some, what's the word that I want? Valid reservations. People may be letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. They may be worried about the logistics. They may be worried about the detail. They may be worried about delivery, whatever you want to call it. And they would be wrong. This is possibly going to be Keir Starmer's greatest legacy. It is bold, it is comprehensive, it may have gone a little further than some people wanted, but I would rather with legislation like this that things go too far than not far enough, and it will potentially improve and even save the lives of countless children. He is removing a cancer from the body politic. He is detoxifying the bloodstream of our young people. And it's taken me a while to get to this position, almost as long as it's taken Keir Starmer. And the reason for that is that, like you, I look at social media usage through the lens of my own experiences, which were, until Elon Musk bought Twitter, largely pleasant and benign. And albeit that there were occasions where I found myself thinking, gosh, I should probably go out there and do something less boring instead, or take up bird watching, or commune with nature a little more, or stop, constantly engaging with people who aren't worthy of one's time. This is going back a long, long way. I didn't have negatives, and for reasons that I will never fully understand, but I'm almost certain that the credit lies with Mrs. O'Brien. My children, who are absolutely of the age where you could have expected the bad stuff to happen, were not victims to social media, have not been plagued by or hurt by social media. So you come at this story, I think, very, very closely attached to your most personal experience. And the problem, and whenever I say my children have not been affected by it unduly, I always cross my fingers, because I don't know for sure, none of us do. The massive majority of children having the worst imaginable experiences on social media are doing so in a world that their parents know nothing about. And this, I think, is the point. And this is why I greet today's announcement with close to undiluted enthusiasm and borderline joy. 8 minutes after 10 is the time. And I'll tell you why. I can tell you things that will make your hair stand on end, some of which you will be aware of, some of which you won't. My wife is a psychotherapist and works entirely with children. And that means that she has exposed herself to the technologies and what they are capable of doing in ways that still shock me as someone who talks about them for a living. That's a sort of flaw in the media model there. But some of the examples she's mentioned make me want to cry for young people today. That there is, for example, an incredibly popular subculture on there that encourages self-harm. It doesn't just encourage self-harm, it glamorizes, it fetishizes self-harm. That there is footage of a young person walking down a tree-lined avenue with beautiful music playing in the background, and in the middle of that process, and there's a trigger warning here. And remember, I'm 54 years old and I'm talking to you. I'm not sure how old you are, but you're older than the people in these videos. They're all at school at the moment. And I'm issuing a trigger warning to you about something I'm about to say on the radio. Okay, particularly if you have experience or knowledge of self-harm. I'm issuing a trigger warning to you as a fully fledged, functioning adult about something I'm about to say on the radio. Because there's no trigger warnings on social media. And this stuff, if it pops up in your algorithm and you find yourself watching it for a few more seconds than your average engagement, then they will pump it into your phone day and night, constantly. But let me tell you what, I always do that when there's something on the horizon that I don't really want to say out loud, don't I? I distract myself deliberately. Trigger warning. So a young woman, a teenage girl, will be walking down a beautiful bucolic idyll, a tree-lined avenue, birds tweeting in the trees, music playing in the background, and she will be beautiful, and she will be dressed in flowing robes and looking ethereal and magical. And as she walks down this idealized image, she will cut herself in a way that is designed to look appealing and attractive. And I could weep telling you that. I could weep like the fathers and mothers we've spoken to on this programme who've spoken to us about what it's like to have a child who self-harms. I could weep for the fathers and mothers who've spoken to us on this... Well, I could weep for their children first, foremost. I could weep for the people who've told us what it's like to deal with eating disorders, because people who are my age grew up aware of these practices, self-harm, eating disorders, and other conditions. We grew up in a world where there wasn't really anybody out there telling you to do it, telling you it was cool, telling you it was great. And they do something else as well, these communities, these worlds. They pre-engineer, if that's the word. They reverse engineer objection. So you are told that if somebody tries to stop you doing this, and this would apply to eating disorders and to self-harm and possibly to other things, they'll tell you that if somebody tries to stop you doing this, then they are denying you the beauty that is depicted in those images, in those videos, in those films. Just put your hand up if that's new to you. But not if you're driving, obviously. I'm talking mostly metaphorically. If you didn't know that stuff was, literally a single click away. Turn on, tune in, freak out. A single click away. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop it. And it does the same with suicide. They glamorize, they fetishize suicide. And the platforms, the adults, the humans, because I think we use the word platforms a little bit too much, the humans who profit from this stuff have done next to nothing to stop it. It would be hard enough for a fully fledged adult to deal with untrammeled and unfiltered access to these kind of horror shows. But we have been allowing our children to wallow in it, unchecked, unchaperoned, unaided, and largely unaware for years. I'm sorry that it took me a while to come to this position, because I think I should have been a little bit ahead of the curve on it. I should have been calling for this in much more explicit and certain terms for a little bit longer. But I'm like you. I base my positions on my personal experience, even though I have this job, which means that every day I have access potentially to 1.5 million disparate, diverse and different personal opinions. But the more you look into this, the sicker it is. And that's the extremes. Then you come to the shallower end that can be just as damaging, just as dangerous, Just the obsession with appearance, the obsession with status, the entirely unrealistic comparisons to people who don't actually exist. They just put up false and fallacious depictions of themselves on social media. The pursuit, the ludicrous pursuit, the damaging, dangerous pursuit of some weird form of physical perfection. And these children are so young. They're so young that sometimes the thirsts that they are sating and the appetites that they are feeding are not, as is the case with most adults, a consequence of trauma. Childhood trauma, that is the trauma. The trauma is the interaction with social media. The thing about boarding school, I've said this to you a few times, is that you can never close the door when you get home at the end of the day, because home is school and school is home. And that is a part of the reason why so many of us emerge emotionally detached, and what we like to call a thick skin is in fact a form of emotional absence, because that's what you have to become in order to survive. What social media has done is rob every child in the world, or every child in our world, of the ability to close the door when they get home at the end of the day, and at least not have to deal with this stuff until we go back to school tomorrow. Because even if you manage not to look at it, you know it's there. You know it's there. You know, I mean, most normal people can't walk past a door when they know other people are talking about them on the other side of the door without pausing to put your ear to the keyhole. And by normal people, I mean people who don't do this kind of thing for a living. Kids can't do that. Think what you were like when you were 15. If you knew that people were talking about you somewhere else. Imagine having the ability at the age of 15 to genuinely not care about that. Massively unrealistic. Massively unrealistic. So, that's quite a dull opening, isn't it? Because I'm doing something I can't remember doing. And I'm suggesting to you that this is, I mean, of course it is vulnerable to letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. But the platforms, the people that run the platforms have not just failed utterly to do anything about this, they have encouraged it, they have exploited our children, and they have profited from it. And although you might have woken up this morning and found yourself thinking, well, that's a bit odd, my children use YouTube to revise. There are some excellent tutorials on there that have really helped them with their GCSE revision this summer. That will find a new home. That will migrate to a safer place that teachers and parents are much more aware of, much more au fait with. And yes, of course, children will, like water, find little gaps to seep through, and new platforms that are currently not even possessed of names we know will spring up and harvest some of these people. But you don't turn down a saucepan when you're in a boat that's sinking and you decide to help bail it out. You don't say, no, I'll just wait for a bucket, please, or I'll wait for the lifeguards to arrive, I'll wait for the RNLI. You start trying to get as much water out of that boat as you can. I thought of David Hockney, would you believe, when I was preparing to talk about this morning, and the fact that he was, I think, was he almost 89 when he died, and he smoked like a chimney until the very end. Nobody sensible, normal, intelligent would cite David Hockney as a reason why smoking is not bad for you. Nobody would ever say, well, hang on a minute, David Hockney was nearly 90 when he died and he smoked like a trooper. No one would ever say, therefore, it must all be lies. All this stuff about lung cancer, all this stuff about emphysema, all this stuff about smoking-related illness. Look at David Hockney. He was nearly 90 and he smoked like a chimney. No one does that, right, anymore? No one does that anymore. So you don't look at social media and say to yourself, well, I'm all right. My kids seem okay. Therefore, this must all be a moral panic. This must all be exaggerated. And that phrase there, that double-worded phrase, moral panic, is, I think, at the heart of why our responses to this are so strange. Moral panic. Video didn't kill the radio star. Video games didn't end civilization as we know it. Violent films didn't turn us all into feral murderers. None of the things that certain sort of commentators and people largely of the right are always warning us are the end of civilization. None of it came to pass. Social media was and is all of those things. It has positives. It has good sides. It has wonderful opportunities for people who might otherwise be alienated and isolated to engage with the world in ways that they wouldn't ever be able to do so. And I don't want to be the one to tell those people that they just have to suck it up for the benefit of the greater good. But that's the way society works. That's the way governments work, and that's the way the law works. You do something because it's the right thing to do. And it prioritises the needs and the welfare of the most vulnerable members of our society, our population, our children, over everybody else, up to and including the people, the humans, not the platforms, that exploit, that hurt, and that profit from our children's pain and misery. So I can't remember the last time we did a phone-in like this. But join me this morning in applauding the government, applauding Keir Starmer, and explaining why you welcome, and of course, tell me why you don't welcome it. But I've set my stall out, I think, fairly comprehensively. So do feel free to treat it like a coconut shy and start lobbing your balls in my direction. But I can't remember the last time I actually felt in my soul that a Prime Minister had done something absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And lest you worry about footballification or bias or anything like that, I think he's dropped more balls than the worst goalkeeper in the World Cup. I think Keir Starmer has been an almost crushing disappointment as Prime Minister in a million different ways. And that is why I still can't quite allow myself to relax into this one, because they could still fluff it. They could still mess it up. Can't quite see a U-turn taking place, but it's taken place on almost everything else that some of us have greeted warmly when it was originally announced. I can't see them undoing this. They seem to have spent a lot of time putting it together, and I am here for your quibbles and your caveats, but I don't think that they will undermine the point about the perfect being the enemy of the good. I just want today you to tell me why you're glad about this. You can draw upon personal experiences, you can draw upon broader understandings, you can draw upon knowledge. I just want you to tell me why you're glad about this, and whether you agree with me that this will actually be Keir Starmer's place in the history books. This will be the one. This will be the thing that is always remembered. And other countries will come in and will fall into place. Eventually, countries where children are allowed access to these hideous platforms will be countries that have, incredibly low ages of consent, countries that we look at and think are medieval. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. And listen, I don't normally do this, but if you want to tell me why it's not good and why you don't welcome it, the number is the same, but I don't think you're going to be able to change my mind. I normally revel in the fact that you can change my mind between 10 and 11 every morning, but I don't think you'll change my mind on this one, because I'm not just analysing it intellectually, I'm feeling it in my bones. And I'm thanking every God there is that this government has finally prioritised the welfare of children over the nonsense that's spouted by oligarchs and tech bros, and simply said, no, you can't be trusted to do this yourself, so we are going to do it for you.
LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 10. It's almost as if you've been in bed for a year and you've forgotten how to use certain muscles. Is the word atrophy, Keith? Do they atrophy, those muscles? And you sort of find yourself preparing to heap praise on Keir Starmer, and then your sort of lizard brain kicks in and goes, no, don't do that, he'll mess it up, he'll reverse ferret, he'll do a U-turn, you feel it, right? But I think this is a moment for almost undiluted enthusiasm, because who here could not welcome, applaud, celebrate legislation designed to protect our children from the worst corners of the internet? All of them, all of it. There's no downside to this at all that won't be easily and quickly overcome, he says, while reminding you of the phone number. Jane's in Camden. Jane, what would you like to say?
James, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, very happy, actually. Surprisingly happy, actually. The more I talked about that in the introduction, the happier I got.
You and me both. Yeah, I mean, we're over the moon about it. We've had to battle quite hard with our daughter, who's 13, to educate her about the use of social media. And I spotted it in the very kind of, I mean, maybe when she was about 11 or 12, you know, her friends got a phone, she wanted a phone. We did all that kind of thing of, we need to make sure that you're safe online. So we did everything that we could. And I found that, you know, even before she got into the Instagrams and stuff like that, we noticed that she was just going up to her room, shutting her door, and she was in there all day on the phone. And I thought, actually, this needs to stop now. So we did take the phone off of her, and I just witnessed her have a complete meltdown, kind of in a way that maybe a drug addict would behave if you were to, you know, remove their drugs from them. And I just thought, my God, this is awful. We cannot allow this. And this went on, this battle. And it got to the point where I kind of did a Kirsty Allsopp, and I wasn't proud of it, but I know that I had another phone. I actually smashed the phone in front of her, and I just saw her heart just break. And I thought, we just can't. But it was actually that pinnacle moment that turned things around, and she started to understand.
You were lucky in a way. I mean, did you ever doubt? Did you ever think, maybe I'm the baddie here? Maybe...
All the time.
Yeah, like that's the thing, isn't it? That's what today changes, is that it creates the context in which parents can do what you're doing, and parents that haven't been doing what you're doing will find it a lot easier to do so. And of course, even if they can't, then ideally and hopefully the technological changes being introduced will do the job for them. Yeah,
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that things are perfect. She'll still go on, but course. You know, we would have a conversation. But now I'd said to her, look, there's a ban, and she just kind of shrugged her shoulders and went, fair enough, okay, that's fine. She said, actually, it will give me more time. But actually now she's monitoring me because I'm a hypocrite.
Yes,
you
are.
I'm sat there
No, you absolutely are, I'm afraid. I wish I could offer you some words of comfort or defence, but you are, Jane in Camden, a massive hypocrite. That's the next chapter in this story. That's the next chapter in this story.
That is absolutely right, and I wish they would take it away from me, but actually I've now made a concerted effort to get her to police me, because it started off, and this is the other point I wanted to make, on these platforms, it starts off really nice. You know, the first thing I could see was cake making and stuff to do around the house. Fantastic, great. And then literally within maybe a week or so, it was, you know, dogs being abused, women being abused, you know, stuff against people of colour. It was all that kind of stuff that I just thought, this is a sewer.
Yeah, and unfiltered, absolutely unfiltered. And I'm fond of analogies, and one of the most obvious ones with this kind of thing is tobacco, albeit that one has physical consequences and one has mental consequences. But it's not as if we ban smoking for under 16s and then go, oh, that's amazing. So it stops giving me cancer, does it, on my 16th birthday? What an incredible biological creation we human beings are. So, yeah, but we're not in that chapter today. Jane's just giving us a little taste, of course, of what's next, because if it is so damaging to people under 16, and of course, remember that, you know, on your 16th birthday, you suddenly get access to all of these things. The calculation is that's the age at which so much changes in your life, and the optimism is built upon the idea that you'll be slightly better equipped to cope with all of that. I think that's actually true, by the way. I think the difference between 10 or 11 and jumping into this world unprompted, and being 16 and jumping into this world unprompted is immense. And some 16-year-olds will still suffer, will still fall, but most, I think, the massive majority will not be hypnotised by it in quite the same way. And look, it doesn't end with today's announcement. Hopefully it ends, or it doesn't end ever. There's a constant recalibration, a constant evolution of this kind of thing, to the point where, and this is where I can say I've been telling you this for years, they won't do anything unless it costs them more to do it than it does to not do it. They will never, ever do anything unless it costs them more not to do it, than it does to do it. That's the only way you ever get them to do anything, these people. It's so primitive. It's so feral, and yet it's so simple and so true. I don't know that it used to be like this. I think, companies that made an awful lot of money used to have some sort of social conscience, used to invest in diversity, equity and inclusion and research and development and the welfare of the workforce and the customer. But not really. Think of tobacco and think of fossil fuels, because that is the triangle of which social media is 0.3. I don't care how much damage it does to our customers. We're going to try to rinse them for everything they've got. Oh, and their children. And that's why today, albeit that there'll be quibbles and details to argue over, you cannot fault the central thrust of this announcement. 10:30, Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
33 is the time. From my, I don't think I'm the only one to do this, but I would say TikTok is toast. YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, X, Reddit, Facebook, Twitch, Kick and Threads are all likely to be covered by this ban on social media for under 16s. We may, and I don't know that we will necessarily, but we may move on to the logistics of it and the implementation of it. But at the moment, I'm more interested in the sort of gut reaction to it, which has to be, in my humble opinion, has to be positive. Let me read you some texts. David and Visham are up next, but just let me get through a few of these texts as well. I'm a man. There's another trigger warning here, and I'm not going to say anybody's name. I'm a man in my 30s. Towards the end of my 20s, I went through a breakup. Looking back, I realised it was a particularly toxic relationship, but at the time I was heartbroken. I found a community online dedicated to self-harm. The words they would use to describe the act were haunting. They would try to make it comical. They'd talk openly about it as if it wasn't a big deal. And I fell for it, unfortunately, thankfully not for long. If an adult in his 20s could find those places and fall for their lure, then I fear for children. I also wonder how many children were in that community at the time and what might have happened to them since. No one sensible could ever be against this ban. I agree with you, Neil, but if people are against it because they haven't been properly informed, then let's not hold it against them. We live, of course, in the age of the insensible. Joanne writes, I recall being horribly bullied at school in the last century. Don't say that, please, Joanne. It makes us feel ancient. And I'm only just realising how much more terrorised or besieged I would have felt had there been internet back then. The lives of young people today, in similar circumstances, but with access to the internet and messaging, will literally have no let-up ever, no breathing space, so long as their phone or their tablet is connected to the internet. And I'd add, even when it isn't, you're living in fear of what might be going on. And yes, you know, some people will live a million miles away from these experiences and they get punished too. But David Hockney smoked every day and lived to be 89. No one says that we should rescind the smoking ban as a consequence of his experiences. David is in Southend. David, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'm so relieved that this is coming in. I'm 34. I've grown up with social media, and all I can describe it as is it's an addiction, and it's like crack cocaine, and it's been designed that way. Yeah. Every single time. I mean, imagine being a kid with this. Being an adult, it's hard enough to bear with it. But as a kid, every single time you get that little beep, that little notification, oh, someone's trying to talk to me, someone wants to give me something, I've got a like, I've got this. You can't get them away from it. And it's those dopamine hits again and again and again that just, it's a drug.
I'm so glad you've rung in because I've gone immediately for the outer limits. I've gone immediately for the hideous stuff, partly because that was the conversation I had with my wife this morning. But absolutely, even when you're doing relatively innocuous things, it's addictive. It is addictive, and the addiction is a problem in and of itself. It's not just the thing that you are addicted to, the content, the type of content that you're addicted to, which obviously in the case of self-harm or eating disorders or bullying or the rest is troublesome, deeply, deeply troublesome. It's the very act of addiction itself. Being addicted to sweets is bad. Being addicted to, being addicted to exercise can be bad for you, and exercise is good for you. So the act of addiction is absolutely central to this entire conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and it's constantly there. It's in your hand. And I think the difference with the phones and the iPads is that you can take them everywhere. Before, if someone was addicted to TV, once you go outside, the TV isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not available. These things are constantly there.
What was that film? Do you remember? There was a documentary about 10 years ago. I watched it. I can't remember what it was called. And I mean, when we look back, when historians of the future look back on this will be one of the things that merits an entire chapter. And of course, not everybody saw it, but they interviewed loads of Silicon Valley seniors, loads of Silicon Valley players. And I'm sure I didn't dream this. They all said I wouldn't let my own children anywhere near the stuff that we're developing.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that. But I mean, I came off social media about 5 years ago, and I was quite a light user.
Right.
But I could still see it myself. I was scrolling, and I was going, what am I doing? I'm just scrolling. I'm not looking at anything. This isn't adding anything to my life. So I came off it, and within 5 days, I was more aware, I was more attentive, I was more talkative, I was more energetic, I was more creative. I can't even imagine the damage this is doing to the younger generation.
And this is the point. This is what I'm trying to. This is what you've brought, and I forgot. Is the innocuous stuff. So 3 hours of your life has gone watching, if you're lucky, watching puppy videos or watching ping pong, great feats of ping pong playing, or watching. What did I get into a while ago? And I caught myself thinking, this is people putting fake parcels on their doorsteps, and then thieves come and try and steal them, and they blow up and cover them in brightly coloured powder. If you want to spend 10 minutes a day doing that, that's fine. But if you suddenly notice you spent 3 hours a day doing it, that's 3 hours of your life you never get back, every single day, forever and ever. The Social Dilemma, the film was called, The Social Dilemma. And it did exactly that. You look back and think, our children, their own children, they won't let their own children anywhere near it. Anywhere near it. And yet, they have made billions out of getting our children addicted to it. Thank you, David. Vishan is in Grays. Vishan, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
I think it's a great step in the right direction, but my biggest concern is going to be the how of it. And this is something that I would love for you to look at in detail over the course of the next year. I don't feel like the legislation...
Are you giving me homework, Vishan? Sounds like you're giving me homework. All right, fair enough. Carry on.
I said to your researcher earlier, like anything, this is going to come down to the implementation of it. Now,
yes.
I think the parallel that I drew was the normal laws and the legislation within the UK. The police are overwhelmed. The courts are overwhelmed. Now, take that to the internet. You've got algorithmic policing, which the social media companies get away with. They don't really care about it.
Yes.
And I think the plan that Ofcom have laid out through like identity checks and fines and whatnot, you're treating symptoms and you're not dealing with it at the root cause. And that's my concern. What fundamentally needs to happen is the legislation hopefully will go further at some point to actually deal with the algorithms that are feeding this content. To the younger generation.
Yeah, I mean,
this is what needs to happen.
You're not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, are you? You're just pointing out that this is the beginning of a process, not the end.
Yeah, and this is the challenge for me, is because do we trust the government to do anything well at the moment? I don't know that I do. And I think it's a great step, but I really, really want to understand what they intend to do beyond just legislation and these, what I feel like is surface-level bans.
I think it's more than a surface-level ban. 4.7 million social media accounts were deactivated, removed or restricted in the first days after the ban went live in December last year in Australia. A report from the Commissioner, the E-Safety Commissioner, found that a substantial proportion of under-16s managed to keep their accounts or create new ones, bypassing the age-gating systems. And no one is pretending that isn't going to happen here. But a significant number of accounts had been removed. So that is progress. That is better than what was there before.
I agree. I don't disagree with you. However, James, look, you're right in saying that it can be circumvented, but with AI and the way things have changed in terms of like search and the improvements in technology, you can go ask AI and it will list you literally within a few point nanoseconds.
Yeah.
hundreds and thousands of apps. Like, you can access YouTube, you can access TikTok without ever having to log into TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. And so it's the technology is changing, and the progression of development in this area is changing in access and content, which is why I want this to be dealt with at root level by the companies that are putting social media content out there. I don't want it to be policed algorithmically. If you have you ever tried to get in touch with a member of a support team for one of these social media platforms? It's next to impossible.
I tried to complain about Deliveroo the other day. That was hard enough.
Right, and could you imagine a child that's marginalised dealing with something, and you're trying to help that child?
That's a really good point. It's a really good point. This is the issue
for me. It's the root cause of what this is. And yes, the bans help, but I don't think it's going to go far enough. So it needs to be a stepping stone to a larger discussion that we continue with far more stringent checks on the content and the companies that are actually in charge. Well,
I think you work in the sector, right?
Yes, I do.
I could tell, but I think that we're back to, and it's not lazy, I don't think. Sometimes a simple little phrase can encapsulate quite complicated issues, but until it costs them more to do nothing than it does to do the right thing, then nothing will actually change.
So this is the thing, it won't actually cost them more. I think the way that things are now, it's very easy to say, and you've seen this in addresses where social media CEOs and moguls have been grilled in the US and inquiries in Senate. They just don't care. They have checks that they use as blanket terms. Oh, we have policing, we have this, we have algorithmic policing, we try and remove the content. It's ridiculous in the way that they do policing online and support online, especially on social media platforms. It's a massive gap, and what needs to happen is these companies need to address the algorithms they're using to feed this content to not just young people, adults as well. It's crazy in the way that it all works. And what needs to happen is the legislation needs to push further for them to push these social media companies to address these issues at the level that they're putting it out.
And that's why today, I mean, although these voices need to be heard, you don't say, well, look, here's some flaws, here's some loopholes, here's some kids that have circumvented it, here's some evidence that it's not perfect. You don't take that as a reason to say, let's not bother. You take that as a reason to say...
I want it to go further, James.
Yeah,
that's the point I'm making.
Let's get going.
To start pressing the social media companies further. And hopefully this is the start of that and not the end of the conversation. Well, okay, we've implemented a ban. Let's see how it goes. It needs to continue further.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with a single thing you've said, and that includes your sort of low-level pessimism as well, albeit that you greet today's announcements, a little pessimism about the likelihood of the government being able and be minded to go further. We've seen some evidence of it, and you know, this is the first thing that Keir Starmer has done explicitly involving standing up to the sort of new aristocracy, the techocracy, or whatever you want to call it, the oligarchs who have replaced the earls and the dukes and the kings and the emperors as the people who control the universe. And he has said to them, you can take your technology and stick it where the sun don't shine. Now, loads and loads of children will be very, very keen to stay on there, which is where Vishan's points kick in. And I don't have the Latin, as the late great Peter Cook might have said, to comment on what you need to do to the algorithm. But I would have thought that I mean, everyone's going to laugh at me now, but you just turn it off. So in the same way with cookies, when you say no to cookies, and it means that your online presence won't be bombarded with advertisements for trampolines because you bought a trampoline last month. And in fact, the one period of your life where you don't want to see advertisements for trampolines is a month after buying a trampoline. But of course, if that technology is on, then the floodgates open. So you just probably remove the technology that says if they've shown, if they've demonstrated, and this would apply to adults, they've demonstrated an interest in, for example, online racism, then the technology that then fills their feed with online racism just gets disabled. No wonder Elon Musk is so worried about freedom of speech. Do me a favour. He's worried about having a few obstacles to his mission to spread toxic racism to every single corner of the planet, never mind the internet. 10:46 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
8:49 is the time. This made me smile, from Jake in Sheffield. James, please do buy trampolines. Signed, the partner of Bryony Page, Olympic trampoline champion. Also, social media is awful. You won't know this, Jake, nor will Bryony, I imagine, but I went trampolining with an Olympian a few years ago. I nearly broke her arm. I don't know if that bit came out on the actual film. Somewhere in the dim and distant corners of the internet, there will be footage of me. Kat Driscoll was her name. Absolutely lovely woman. And I went training with her for the old trampoline. I obviously was rubbish at it. I think I did a forward roll in the air or something. But she was holding me at the time, and I kind of didn't let go as I went over on the trampoline. I imagine if I'd broken the arm of an Olympian about a month before the game started. Ah, dear. And that's when we all thought the internet was fun. You know, it was all, it's all just fun and games. Tim Berners-Lee, when he invented it, had extraordinary visions. And for a while it looked great, but then it happens everywhere in life. The bad people moved in and did bad things, and we didn't notice they were bad at first. YouTube? Who had a problem with YouTube when they first stumbled across it? Maybe it was my clips or bits of this show that brought you into YouTube. And look, we lose today. We probably see some of our numbers go down, judging by some of the things my children tell me. It's Instagram where their clips are doing well at the moment, according to my own children. And of course, we're in a building with lots of music stations as well that have big online presences that appeal to younger people than necessarily we do. So there will be prices, but how can you not welcome it, even if it is imperfect? Josephine speaks for many when she writes, "My daughter is 10. I've got so tired of saying no to social media. I feel like the government are finally supporting all parents, the parents who know about the dangers online and keep having to say no to their kids, and the parents who don't really have a clue what their kids are doing and need the extra support. To be honest, the parents who also don't give a stuff what their kids are doing are going to be benefiting from this as well. All of our children are going to be better protected, and that means happier adults later on." Fingers crossed. And of course, the other element of that we sometimes forget about is that the parents who are not fully on top of things are not bad parents. It's a point Josephine makes. 3 categories: parents who know, parents who don't know but would be absolutely outraged and horrified if they did know, and then parents who probably wouldn't be that horrified because they're not very good parents. All benefit from this. I always think of adolescents in the middle group. Do you remember the line? I think it was Stephen Graham that said it, was it? We thought he was safe. We thought he was safe. In his room on his phone. We thought he was safe. I wonder if Kemi Badenoch's got around to watching that yet. And I also wonder what fault she'll find in... Well, no. Kemi Badenoch will do 2 things with this announcement. She will either attack it without really being fully clear on what the problem is, or she'll claim it was her idea all along. It's 10:52. I imagine that she would have done one or the other by the time we go home at 1 o'clock. Shall we take bets, Keith? 52-48. Will Kemi Badenoch claim that it was her idea all along, or will she attack it for spurious and vague reasons? You can text vote on that. What's it going to be? Attack or claim? Trish is in Preston. Trish, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello,
Nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
I am literally celebrating today. I cannot tell you.
Well, you have to. That's how it works. It's a phone-in show. You have to tell me, Trish.
Right. I was a teen of the 80s. Loved it. No, I got my first phone at 30, and that's because I was pregnant and I needed one.
Yes.
I'm not really into all the social media, all the rest of it, but I've worked as a teacher since 1993, and I've literally, and I think other teachers will probably say the same, watched how lives have changed for children with the introduction of phones.
Tell me more.
I'm going to use Jonathan Haidt, the book that Haidt. My children, who are adults now, they did have phones, but they got Blackberries. And even then, my daughter went bonkers on texting and used all the credit up. So that was even on that sort of a phone. My children had a play-based childhood rather than a phone-based one. And I've just witnessed so many things in schools. I've seen how bullying entered into your home environment. I've seen children addicted to things online that stop coming into school. I've seen them falling asleep and exhausted because they don't sleep. And it's just been a real shame to witness that. Yes. I do put that down to the use of phones. It's just before that, it was a completely different situation. But the one thing that I do want to talk about today, though, I just said to your producer, is the adults are still will have their phones. And I've since left teaching, although I do tutor, and I've gone down the mental health route. But I just want the adults to remember, your children need you, and it doesn't take a lot to really give a child what they need, and what they need is to be seen and to be heard, just to be validated, and a small amount of time. And I didn't even really think of this myself as a mum until I started working one-to-one with children. The shift in a child when you've just listened to them without any advice, without anything, and just validated how they feel. And I really hope parents will take time to come off their own phones. The adults will, and just remember that now's the time that children will have more time when they're not doing all this.
So it's your opportunity to step up.
It's your opportunity, please, parents, because I've seen it. And,
put.
Yeah, children tell me, they speak to me, and they tell me, and I just think this is really the good time now.
Do you know something else? Even before social media existed, we craved our parents' attention. Not in a bad way, not in a look at me, mummy, no hands. But my dad was probably a workaholic.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this the other day, the times when he'd have an afternoon where he could play cricket with me in the garden or kick a ball around in the park. They were some of my... And I wish it had happened every weekend, but it didn't, because he did shifts for the Sunday Telegraph on Saturday. So he was always working, my dad, and he was often away. And those are some of my most amazing memories. It felt like Christmas when Dad said, "Right, come on, let's get the ball, let's go to the park, or get the bat out, let's play cricket." And that's it. It's the same thing. Even when the temptations of social media weren't there, I'm 54 years old. I can well up thinking about that today. So these impacts and these potential damages are there forever, aren't they?
Yeah, and I know people are busy, but I promise you. It literally 2, 3 or 4 minutes just listening to your child, reassuring them, just let them know.
Read them a story. Read them a story. Yeah. Don't stick it on the flipping, on the audible, on the audio. People do that now. Do the bedtime story on the technology as well. And
I mean, but they are the wisest and most amazing people, and it's been a privilege for me to work with children.
They're such good company as well, aren't they? Although, as you say, they've been sold. I mean, a pal of mine who's a tennis coach, Trish, not far from your neck of the woods, actually, up north. Yeah. And he was in a school the other day, and he said he doesn't do children that much. He mostly teaches adults, but he's started doing some school-based stuff, and he went into some 12-year-olds, and he's quite a bouncy character, he's kind of, that's part of his appeal as a coach, as he gets people going and it gets them all physical, and he's like, "Right, hi," he's like, "I'm John, right, what's your name?" And he said I'd never seen anything like it, a completely normal state school actually. And they just looked at him, and and he goes up to one of them and shakes them by the hand, and they're just sort of lethargic and barely, not making eye contact, not great. So he says to the teacher afterwards, and the teacher goes, "Yeah, that's the Instagram generation. I don't think you've ever come across it before." And my mate said, "Well, I'm on Instagram. I do some tennis coaching stuff on Instagram." And he goes, "Oh, well, tell them that. They'll be really interested." And I don't have anything to say about that. It just sums something up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's standing in front of them, getting ready to teach them tennis, and they're not particularly interested. But if they knew he was on Instagram with quite a big following doing tennis stuff, then they'd be all over. That's just bizarre when you think about it.
It is, but I have to say, all the ones I've worked with over the years, they're all amazing.
Yes, and they need help. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. If you look after the children, then society can look after itself, and we haven't been looking after the children. It starts next year, which is, some people will argue, not soon enough, but presumably they want to get it right. A block on functions which allow strangers to communicate with children under 16. Restrictions on these functions also on by default for under 17, so it's a sort of staggered entry into this universe rather than a cliff edge. Overnight curfews and breaks in infinite scrolling for under 18s sound pie in the sky, but it's easily done. I mean, it is easy. If they can engineer this stuff to fill your feed with the thing that is most likely to keep you on for 150 minutes rather than 145 minutes, then they can do almost anything. So don't let them argue that they can't, or that the loopholes are a reason to avoid it. We wouldn't do that in any other area of life. And listen to Trish in Preston and take this opportunity to spend some more time with your children.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 11. This is from Keith, not that one. Man, you just made me burst into tears listening to you describe you and your dad. It made me think of me and mine, and then my kids, who I'm currently deferring activities with until tomorrow as I'm too busy today. We've all been there. But if the reason why you are, quotes, busy, end quotes, and this isn't the case for Keith, is because you are 3 hours down on the day because you were spending it scrolling on social media. And here's a point I think that needs to be stressed, and we'll move into this territory in the next hour. Even if what you're looking at is not in and of itself harmful, so you're not looking at, racist provocations. You're not looking at very, very carefully engineered reel after reel after reel after reel after reel of people of colour committing crimes all over the world, designed to make you think that only people of colour commit crimes, which is essentially where Nigel Farage's politics seems to be moving now, because he's so spooked by the threat to his base from a politician who's prepared to say out loud what everybody knows Farage thinks and believes privately. We may do that as a phone-in this week, if you're up for it. What's the difference between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage? Spoiler alert, there isn't any, but I'd be interested to know what you think on that. You can tell things are serious for Farage because the Daily Mail has gone after Rupert Lowe today. They finally found a rich bigot that they're prepared not to like in public. So one big difference, I suppose, between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage is that Rupert Lowe made his own money, whereas Nigel Farage depends on secret donations from foreign-based billionaires for his, which means you can't listen to what he's saying about this today. He's talking about VPNs. I don't know whether he's taken millions of pounds from people that provide VPNs. It's a little bit odd that he's responding to legislation designed to protect our children by bigging up the things that they could use to avoid the legislation designed to protect them. Nigel Farage essentially providing free adverts for the technology tycoons who could benefit from providing loopholes to children. A very odd intervention, unless, of course, he's taken money secretly from the owners of those platforms, of those technologies, in which case it wouldn't be odd at all. And we'll never know, will we? Because we know he doesn't tell us if he took money a few years ago or just before deciding to return to politics. He may have taken money from a VPN tycoon, just like he took money from a cryptocurrency tycoon. He may have taken money from Elon Musk. Well, I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Maybe he's taken money from Elon Musk, which is why he's now tacking even further to the right, because that's what Elon Musk wants. I don't know. All we do know is that he takes money from very, very rich people and shortly afterwards announces policies that would benefit those very, very rich people. That's what we know. That's just a fact. That's not an opinion. That's counting. The rest, that's just questions. Why would he be advertising today for free, if it is for free, because, of course, he'll big up the IRA for 80 quid. But why would he be advertising for free the ways in which children can get around these technologies? I don't know. Perhaps you could ask him if you ever get the chance for a nice fireside chat. And Tommy Tickle, 6 minutes after 11 is the time. So the addiction element of it. Here's the thing, and I make no apology for going in hard on the horrors at 10 o'clock this morning, because that's what was in the forefront of my mind, partly because of the conversation that we had at home this morning. And I actually said to my wife, I don't know about YouTube, that seems a bit extreme. And she explained to me what you can find, the things she's encountered in her work as a child psychotherapist that made my hair stand on end. And what you lose is as nothing compared to what you gain from an announcement like this. So let's talk about the addiction element of it that a couple of callers brought into play in the last hour, in the second half of the last hour. Because I think this is quite hard to understand. Even as you begin to wonder whether I'm describing you, you sort of think, do you know, maybe that's me. You can get addicted to Sudoku, right? I mean, you can get addicted to Tetris, but not in a way you close your eyes, you see those bloody bricks dropping down the screen. Sudoku, I'm mildly addicted, for want of a better word, to the New York Times word games, and the I newspaper has some brilliant puzzles as well. Thank you for all the nice comments about the interview that they published with me on in Saturday's paper. Although, to be fair, most of the comments were about the photograph, which was very flattering, but it's almost as if you previously thought that I was a right old minger. It's a brilliant piece, really, really nicely written. I don't know. I mean, is the short answer whether or not it's a dangerous addiction to be playing word games too much? No, I know it isn't. I'm being silly. I don't. That's the point. So I can be found playing crossplay now on the New York Times app whenever I've got a down moment. I've even done the thing I never used to do, which is play complete strangers, who you get sort of hooked up with by the technology. But I love words. I'm not doing it when I should be working. I know I haven't got a problem. How do you know when you do? How do you know when you do? 0345 6060 973. And I want to focus, not exclusively, but I definitely want to draw your attention to the healthy stuff, or at least the innocuous stuff. So you kind of get that sense. It was brilliantly described, wasn't it, by, I think it was Jane in Camden, talking about her daughter having a complete meltdown when the phone was taken away. Now, as an adult, that's never going to happen, really. You might lose your phone, it might get nicked, you might drop it in the canal, but you'll get it back, and you're not a child anymore. So you are ideally, hopefully, a little bit better at regulating your emotions. So you won't have a full-on tantrum in the way that mostly we leave behind when we reach maturity, when we reach adulthood. Not everybody. Some people seem to have tantrums for a living, but generally speaking, we're never going to have that phone wrenched out of our hand, either literally or metaphorically, and deal with what is left behind. And that, I think, is how you know that you're addicted. If I took it away from you now, how would you cope? What would you do all day? How would you fill all of those empty hours that you currently spend scrolling or faffing about on Facebook or watching films on Reels or YouTube? How would you use that time? Because none of it really is nourishing, is it? Do you remember that caller last time we were talking about NEETs who just nailed something that we'd managed to miss despite having more phone-ins about NEETs than almost anything else over the last 2 years? And she talked about a form of fake fulfillment. I found that absolutely revolutionary in my understanding of the issue, because the great mystery for me, and possibly for you or for people around my age, is what do they do in their heads all day? How can they not be worrying about their absence of engagement with the world? How can they not be worrying about their lack of progress in the universe? How can these kids not be conscious of their detachment from society? There's a million young people not in education, employment or training. And the big mystery, what the hell do they do all day? And the answer, I think, in large part, I'm almost retreating from my original observation that there'll be a million different answers to that question. I think the answer is in large part that they are living a fake life online. You know, whether they are playing games or whether they are scrolling aimlessly and endlessly, or not aimlessly, but scrolling endlessly through things, there is a fake sense of engagement, a fake sense of achievement, a fake sense of fulfillment. So they are addicts. They're not affected particularly by this legislation, but they're what happens to the next generation of children if this legislation is not enacted. The level of addiction is such that people think they're living offline lives when they're spending their entire existence online. That's extraordinary, right? So how do you describe to a skeptic what addiction looks like? But not addiction to the horrible stuff that's encouraging you to hurt yourself, or towards an eating disorder or suicidal ideation. The simple commoditization of your attention. Imagine a price on your attention, right? Imagine if I was getting 50p an hour for everybody I could keep listening to this program. Right? I mean, I kind of am, in a way. I suppose my job really is to try to keep you listening for as long as I possibly can. But imagine if I could actually reach parts of your brain that are beyond me, that are a result of dopamine hits and chemical reactions. And I guess tabloid journalism has kind of done it over the last 50 years by encouraging that 2 minutes of hate that Orwell identified long before social media existed. Hate the immigrants, hate the refugees, hate the foreigners, hate the single mothers, hate the unemployed, hate the disabled, hate the unwell, hate the Jewish people, hate the Muslims, hate the Sikhs. Sorry, that's a party political broadcast for Nigel Farage there. I do apologise. What would this show sound like if I could engineer it? Leave morality, conscience, principle, leave it all at the door. What would this show sound like if I could engineer it to just addictify you, to make you addicted to this? Because I'm getting paid for every minute that you listen. And I don't care what listening to this programme is doing to you. And that's where social media has been now pretty much for a decade at least. All it is you are not the customer, you are the commodity. They are selling you to their advertisers. You are not the customer. You are the currency. And that's why there is no limit on how much time they want you to spend on there. They want you to spend 25 hours a day on those platforms. 25 hours a day is what they want. And if you dig deep enough and look in the right places, they will tell you that. They will tell you that. Why do you think they don't let their own children use the platforms that they profit from? They don't let their own children anywhere near them because they want you on there for 25 hours a day. Human nature being what it is, sadly, a lot of the stuff that delivers the biggest numbers is not healthy. Violence, of course, all the ancient hatreds, got to look in. But some of the stuff that delivers 25 hours a day of usage is not outwardly dangerous or damaging. It's the act of addiction that has been commoditized. If you want someone to be doing something for 25 hours a day, you don't care what draws them in or keeps them there. All you care about is that they are drawn in and kept there. So how do you know you've got a problem? As an adult, 0345 6060973, or more pertinently for the conversation we're having today in response to the announcement by the Prime Minister, how do you know your child has got a problem? I mean, how do you know? I always think of that line, and Carl has asked me to stop doing a Liverpudlian accent. As a Scouser, he wrote, please stop. I'm not sure I can help it. Can't help it. We thought he was safe. Stephen Graham. We thought he was safe. 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 Your child's in the bedroom doing stuff. Was he addicted, that character, in that drama? I don't know. Wasn't the point of the drama. It's the point of this conversation. We thought he was safe. He was actually addicted. How do you know? 0345 6060973. Because parents don't know. That's not a criticism. You know, blame the parents is, you know, tabloid knee-jerk reaction volume 3.0, unless the parents are white, in which case, of course, all the problems that their children have got are a consequence of anti-white racism. Will I ever be able to say that phrase without giggling, do you think? Well, we'll find out, because we're going to be hearing it a lot more in the coming years. God save us all. So it's not about blaming the parents. The parents don't know. 3 categories of parent. The ones that know and are horrified, the ones that don't know but would be horrified if they did know, and the ones that really are not worthy of being parents at all, who don't know and wouldn't care if they did, because they've got their own problems, issues, things going on. Addiction. 0345 6060973 is the number you need. Jazz has been in touch. He says, have I missed something? What's with James's 25 hours a day as opposed to 24? Yeah, you've missed something pretty huge and obvious, which I am not going to bother to explain to you. So the tech companies, the social media platforms want your children on there for 25 hours a day. When you look back now, either looking at your own experience or your child's experience, How did you know? When did you realise it was working? When did you realise it was working? 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 20 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We haven't actually heard anything from the Prime Minister on this programme today, so perhaps a timely moment to refresh our memories about the announcement, part of the announcement made by Keir Starmer earlier.
Government is always about choices. And it's clear to me that a full ban is the right choice. Now, I come to it as a parent myself. I know exactly the fears that we all feel when we're thinking about this issue. You know, all I've ever wanted for my own children, hand on heart, is for them to be happy and for them to be safe. And I think that's what any parent wants. But I ask the question now, do we truly believe that social media creates a happy environment for our children? Do we truly believe that it's a place where they can feel safe? I don't think I even need to answer those questions, do I? Every parent can see it with their own eyes. Social media is making children unhappy. It's making it easier for bullies to harass and abuse them. And it could even be harming their mental health.
I think you do need to answer those questions, actually. Not necessarily Keir Starmer, but I wonder whether we should. So it's not just about when you realised addiction had kicked in for yourself or for your child, but tell me when you realised it wasn't making your child happy and or safe. Because that's the line from adolescence, isn't it? And we do need to ask that question. We thought he was safe. When did you realise he wasn't? 0345 6060 973. When did you realise she wasn't happy, that social media wasn't something that you were being a bad parent by denying them access to? I'd quite like some answers to that if you've got a moment. Those two words, happy and safe. Because normally, if it was a given that something was making our children unhappy or unsafe, we'd be all over it. And yet most parents haven't done it. When did you realise it wasn't making them happy and that they weren't safe? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Kelvin is in Ipswich. Kelvin, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, Kelvin.
When did I realise?
That's all right. You didn't ring in to answer that question. I only just asked it, so you can tell me why you picked up the phone.
Well, I picked up the phone originally, obviously hearing the news I'm in Nottingham at the moment. I'm on a job in Nottingham, but obviously I live down in East Anglia.
Okay.
I was listening to the news from Keir Starmer this morning.
Yeah.
Whooping with joy.
Really?
Couldn't have come soon enough for me. Yeah. I have a 14-year-old daughter who has been a prisoner of social media for the last few years. Not her fault, I would hastily add.
Go on.
Because myself and her mum have been prisoners of social media. We've deactivated our accounts in the past and then slowly just wheedled our ways back in, and it's just got hold of us again. I have a history of addiction, so okay. I kicked the drugs years and years ago,
well done.
10, 15 years ago. I kicked the alcohol 8 years ago this September. The one that is still causing me harm is the social media. And it's all come to a head this weekend, funnily enough. I'm 48 years old. I go onto social media. I am the green supporting lefty that is, the subject of hate all over social media at the moment. I was disgusted by the scenes in Belfast, and I put something on social media to say so. I was then receiving replies from people who were condoning the actions. Arguments started. It ended up myself, 48 years old, arranging to meet someone in Costa Coffee for a fight on Saturday morning. My wife is
beside herself.
Yeah, she's
So you can't.
What are you doing?
You can't help it.
Well, I can help it. I couldn't. I'm getting drawn in. I'm saying to people I know and people I love, I can see the radicalisation happening on social media, you know, with all this right-wing, far right-wing.
But you can't. So you can't lecture your daughter on this.
Exactly.
Oh, mate, what a mess.
So, but what I did this morning, as soon as I heard that, I've arrived in Nottingham. I've deactivated all my social media accounts. I've then sent a message to our family group saying what I've done, and my daughter has come back and said she's done the same.
Really?
Yeah. So, for me, this is, you know, the best news I've had for a while.
So what do you think? I mean, is it a combination of you doing it and the government doing it that's made your daughter look at? Because it's going to leave a big hole in her life.
It will leave a massive hole in her life.
Do we know what she spends her time on there doing?
TikTok. It's TikTok more than anything else. A bit of Facebook, but mostly TikTok. But yeah,
just watching rubbish. She's not watching necessarily dangerous stuff or anything.
Not
she just can't turn it off. She can't look away. She's not arranging to meet people for a scrap in Costa Coffee or anything.
No, she's not. No, thankfully. But she's very, very intelligent. 14 years old, and she's saying to me, "Dad, I'm seeing things on here about the far right. I'm seeing things, you know, Nigel Farage this, Nigel Farage that." And she says she doesn't go looking for it, but the algorithms are, you know, they're pushing it into her feed.
Pops up in front of her.
And it's the same for me on Facebook. I block it, but it finds a way back in.
Well, tell me about why. Because you've mentioned drugs and alcohol, and I think even people that have never been addicted to either can actually get their head around the notion of addiction. You're addicted to the way it changes your mood. And I know it's going to be something similar with this, but when you know that it is going to do you damage, because you've come off it before, I've got two questions really. What's the threshold, Kelvin? The point at which you go, crikey, I better pull the plug on this one. In the past, not today. And then if you could, I think we've got time, a quick word on what it feels like when you sense yourself slipping back in again.
Well, if I can start with the later question.
Yes.
Just that feeling of slipping back in. So it's a slow culmination. It builds up really, really slowly. So I go on social media from a place of love, not from a place of hate. And this is what I was trying to say to my wife.
Yeah.
I'm trying to defend what I see is right. So I'm going in and I'm putting defensive comments here, there, everywhere. And it's just overtaken everything again, because it feels like it's a losing battle, because you're never going to win against the bots. But at the time, I feel so, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it.
No, I don't know. You're explaining it perfectly. You're despairing at what's going on in the world, and not being able to do anything about it is making everything worse.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Start small. So start at home. Start by making your daughter's life better, by doing stuff with... I hope I'm not patronising you.
No, not at all.
Just do stuff together. Ask her what she'd like to do with her dad when you come back to Ipswich from Nottingham. Let's do something this weekend, darling. Let's I don't know, head out to Heacham or something like that, or you know, stay in Suffolk. Don't go to Norfolk. That'll just open up a whole new bag of problems.
We won't go there.
But do you see what I mean? It's because I understand what you're describing. You're describing a sense of powerlessness in the face of really bad stuff happening. But Twitter sounds like your drug of choice. Am I right? No, Facebook.
More so Facebook. More Facebook, because it's the people I love and care about.
So you get drawn in. Yeah. You can't. You can't. I mean that is. I mean, Facebook isn't as hideously engineered as Twitter is these days.
Twitter, I know what I'm going to find on there.
So you don't go near that. You just
not
all right.
Really. If I was in a really bad mood and I want to have an argument with someone, I'd go on X or Twitter.
And you would not come away feeling better than you did before.
No, I feel worse.
Well, you get a little brief kick, a brief high, as it were, during
whilst I'm typing, and you know,
God, so you are in an extraordinary situation where you understand entirely what's happening to your daughter, and until now you've been close to powerless to stop it.
Yeah.
Man alive.
And it's a very sad situation to be in.
Yeah, but I mean, there's millions of people in the same situation, and oddly, Kelvin, not very few of them are as self-aware as you are, or as honest as you are. So you're on it. Listen, if you feel yourself slipping back in, would it be helpful to me to give you some advice on what you should do if you can't get offline for a while you're on there? Don't offer your opinions. Just ask questions.
Yeah.
Just ask questions. Ask for proof, ask for evidence, ask what that means. Don't say this, that or the other. Don't call people names. Don't point out the hideousness of what they're doing. Just ask them questions. And it may be less addictive. I hope so. But that's only in the break glass emergency, when you find yourself back on there and you don't want to be. But in order to avoid having arrangements to meet in Costa Coffee for a scrap, you just ask questions. Just ask questions. Ask them what they mean by that. Ask for the proof of that. Ask them if they were aware, for example, that, I don't know, if you're in the armed forces, you already get priority on housing lists. Things like that.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. Not fight. I don't know. I don't know if that... I mean, ideally, you won't do that because you won't be on there at all.
Well, that's the ideal, and that's where it's sitting at the moment, so they're all gone.
Well, let's keep it that way. But if you have a brief relapse, just stick to the questions, not the opinions.
Good advice, as always.
I do my best, Kelvin, and good luck, mate. Stay safe, and good luck to all of you, actually. 11:31 is the time, and if you are expecting to turn up in Costa Coffee on Saturday for a fight, then I think you'll be on your own by the sounds of it, which has got to be a good thing. Here's Dominic Ellis with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I notice from the LBC website that a story I've never really found a way to talk about on the programme has developed in the last, what is it? Let's double check. I don't want to misrepresent. Yeah, just this morning it has developed. Do you know who the Putney Pusher is? The Putney Pusher. This is a jogger who pushed a woman into the path of a double-decker bus on Putney Bridge. And then, I mean, genuinely, amazingly, we never heard another word about him since. They released some footage, albeit quite grainy. But I've had conversations about this off-air on a slightly unhealthy number of occasions because, A, I'm from West London, and B, my theory has always been that he must have been somebody who... I would not be an obvious suspect in this kind of case, someone who was possibly quite well-to-do, because Putney, really. Anyway, there's been a development. A multi-millionaire banker, I read on the LBC website, with royal connections, has been arrested in the hunt for the notorious Putney Pusher. It's a bit like the woman who put a cat in a bin, except with a human being. Utterly unprovoked and bizarre, impenetrable behaviour. Speaking of which, Natasha Clark and Will Guyatt are both here. Natasha, our resident political expert, and Will, our resident tech expert. So no prizes for guessing why. Are you going to rain on our parade, Will Guyatt?
It's tricky because...
That's a yes.
Yeah. Throughout the morning, I've seen way more questions than answers.
Yes.
And I'm in a position where I'm seeing loads of really key things that I think are quite simple as the tech nerd, that are not being answered by the government, and some certain assessments being made that don't tally with my understanding of reality. So,
okay, we'll get to that. Before we do, Natasha, you've been in a technical briefing, and
that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, because this is what happens when politicians try to discuss algorithms and complex code and issues that Will Guyatt understands, but you and I probably don't.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yes, I was in a briefing where they attempted to answer some of these questions. But I think what's happening today, James, is that the Prime Minister's trying to announce something that he's not really quite ready to announce because of his legacy, because of the political issues around his future. Now, he knows that this policy, a ban on social media for under-16s, is on the surface popular. It's popular amongst parents. parents, it's popular amongst teachers, and even children, some children do want to see restrictions on social media, but they haven't ironed out exactly the details on what it will look like. Now, the people that were in that briefing that I was just on do have a bit of a template. They do have a model. We've obviously put in place the Online Safety Act. So things like age verification technology is, and Will can probably go into this more than I can, starting to emerge as something that is able to be used, that is being rolled out across tech platforms. But basically the government today is saying it's up to social media companies. You've got to do this. You've got to sort out the technology for this. And it's for Ofcom, the regulators, who we know are already having problems with enforcing the Online Safety Act in terms of the fines, in terms of the rules that are already in place. It's going to be up to them to decide whether they feel that these social media companies are doing enough to keep kids off the platform. And even Keir Starmer today at that press conference did openly admit some kids will be able to get around this. And he is not saying that all children will be able to be kept off social media, but he equated it to like alcohol. He said, look, just because some kids, some teenagers have beer and manage to get their hands on a drink, does that mean that we should say, well, actually, what's the point in legislating against this at all? Which is, I think, an argument that most people do agree with. That he said, and he said to me in answer to my question, he said, this is about cultural change. I want people in society to be able to say that social media should not be for children.
And you know, the number of parents I've heard from this morning who were simply saying, thank goodness, because now I'm not the baddie. I mean,
exactly.
This is, you're actually speaking to two very different constituencies, or at least Keir Starmer is. Will, your purview is the detail, is the tech, is the feasibility and plausibility. It's the facts, if you like. Whereas Keir Starmer is in the business at least as much as the facts of engendering feelings, a feeling that our society now rejects this. Our society is now a place where we will approach children on social media in the same way that we would approach a 14-year-old drinking cider in the park. You're never going to stop it from happening, but we have a view on whether it should be happening or not. And that view, I mean, pretty close. I heard Nick saying similar as well from contributions this morning. Pretty close to unanimous. So give us some of the negatives. Let's begin with the age verification technology and my very predictable and lazy observation that they did it with pornography. So for over 18s, why can't they do it with social media for over 16s?
Age verification doesn't really exist yet. That's the challenge. It's age prediction. It's getting better on a monthly basis, but it's still on a good day about 70%.
Oh, we all will.
About 70% accurate. So that exists, and I think we're going to see more of that rolled out. But one of perhaps the biggest things here, when I've been looking at what's been said today, I think as adults, we're going to have to spend more time proving we're adults on the internet. That's going to be one of the big things that comes from this announcement. You're going to have to prove you're an adult to use a chatbot. You're going to have to prove you're an adult to use Xbox Live. You're going to have to prove you're an adult to use Discord or Twitch. There's loads of places now where this appears to be the answer. And you're better at this. You two are both better at this than me because I'm just the tech guy. But surely if we're trying to prove our age everywhere, wouldn't a national ID system make a lot of sense?
But we don't rule that out. Vanesh, who rang in earlier, was pointing out we need to see this as the beginning of a process, not an end. And there's quite a lot of dangers attached to seeing it as an end. Unfortunately, we live in a world where a 24-hour news cycle is God, and politics is supposed to deliver perfection yesterday. But this is the beginning of a process, not the end.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier on about the park and the cider. I don't think the park has been fully defined yet as to what this situation is, because on the outside looking in, I'm sort of seeing all sorts of other things now being bandied into this. The suggestion that everybody would say it's admirable that you shouldn't be able to speak to a stranger online. But isn't a chatbot by definition a stranger? There's all sorts of bits that need to be...
as in not a person.
Yeah, as in not somebody you know, not somebody that you've typically engaged with. Some of them can go horrendously off-piste.
They're terrible for OCD rumination, for example.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to not indulge it if a child has got OCD and they obsess, they're looking for certainty all the time, and the worst thing you can do is reassure them. You know, they have to find a way to get through their ruminations, whereas AI or a chatbot will be constantly telling them all the things that their own doctor would tell them they shouldn't be told. But I think we both know that Starmer's aim there is to stop predation.
Oh yeah, and you'll have I'm completely in agreement that something needs to be done. I work a lot with child safety organisations, and I know that's something that's quite important to a lot of people. But this is first-hand for me. It's the first real sort of bit of government policy I pay huge attention to because it's the thing I totally understand and I totally grip. And as somebody that understands it and grips it, I'm still not gripping it.
Yeah, I hear you. Do we know where they're taking their advice from?
No.
Okay. Do we, Natasha? Did you in this briefing and indeed in the speech earlier today? I don't know if this sense that it has been motivated as much by politics as principle. I've heard you say a few times today.
I think it is, and I think Keir Starmer knows that he might not be in power for as long as he wants to, and we heard him allude to that in an interview that he gave last week where he admitted that he might not fight the next election. And we know this is something that actually when we first asked him about it, he was not 100% keen to implement a full ban on social media, so much so that actually there were reports a couple of weeks ago saying he's not going to do it. He's
Although
not
he
going to
never
go for a
said
full
that.
ban. No, he did not. But as in, it was reported that he had reservations about it, which I think he did. And he has 2 teenage children, so he does understand some of the sort of the worries of parents. But he said at the press conference today that it's because he's listened to those parents and the campaigners. But I don't think we can also rule out the fact that it is a very popular policy, and that is exactly what I think he wants to try to cement his legacy for. And also the fact that we've got Australia who have already done it, and he says today that he is trying to learn some of the lessons, so we will be able to learn what they have found out from their 6 months of the ban.
What would you have done differently from day one, Will, if I'd put you in charge of this?
If I'd been put in charge of this, I'd be actually educating society about how to use smartphones. They're hugely powerful devices. None of us understand how to use them, adults or kids.
How would you do that? Because you can't do it on YouTube anymore.
That's a good point. But the Computer for Schools initiative, public broadcasters
I remember that. BBC
in the
Micros.
80s, got lots of people into computers and helped parents understand something that at the time was absolutely revolutionary. So maybe there is something to be done about the responsible use of technology. That's where I'd start this conversation,
Wow.
James. Everybody's looking for guidance. They keep getting different bits of information from the government at the moment, not getting clear understanding of what they need to do.
There's no precedent for what you describe, is there? I can't think of a country that does do it.
No.
The Dalai Lama talks about...
Where is this going?
Hey, you know what show you're listening to.
Could
Talks
go anywhere.
about mental hygiene
Yeah.
being
it's
as
true.
important as physical hygiene. And, obviously, we all know what physical hygiene is, but mental hygiene means taking moments to make sure that you've given your brain a bit of a wash and you've given your soul a bit of a cleanse. And so that is the danger, is that people don't really realise how damaged their mental hygiene can be, even if they're not obviously addicted or they're not obviously accessing some of the worst stuff on there. It's the unrelenting chatter in the background, the knowledge that things are going on, the desperate sense that you need to be part of it. Kelvin in Ipswich put it better than I've heard almost anybody put it before, and that's the kind of thing that would once perhaps have fallen under the purview of public health broadcasting.
Yeah. Like those adverts from the 70s for power and don't swim on a full stomach and all of those things.
I don't know whether they worked. I'm too young to remember them, aren't you?
What, don't swim with a full stomach?
Yeah.
My mum always said that, though.
There you go.
Yeah, see, it worked for her.
I never knew
That's where she got it.
knew if I agree with it or not.
That's where she got it.
But yes, James, I went to a smartphone-free school earlier this year, and I was really interested to talk to the kids about sort of, that you talk about sort of mental health, and a lot of them felt that because they were all in it together, and they all didn't have their smartphones at school, and it was a place where they were learning. They were not looking at what was going on with their friends or their peers or the online world. And Starmer today, I think for the first time, at least the first time I remember him mentioning it, that he does think that there is a correlation between mental health and smartphone use, and that's something that academics have been talking about for the last decade, and we've talked about before on your show. And he is saying for the first time he thinks that we need to look more into that, which is interesting.
I would bet my life on it.
I would bet mine too.
Correlation between adult mental health and smartphone use, social media access as well. Busy day for you, Will Guy. Are you writing something for the website?
Just finished something for the website.
Fantastic.
And then off to do something for YouTube later this afternoon on the LBC YouTube.
If the kids can still see it until next spring.
Yeah, it's still available, kids. I'll be answering a few questions and answers from listeners about the social media ban and what it means from 2:30. Also speaking to an expert from Australia as well, getting a few other guests on. Branching out, James, going off to do some YouTube.
About time. Jonathan will be pleased. He's just been in touch to say, give your tech guy more money. How did you text that while you had both your hands on the desk in the studio?
my agentic chatbot took care of that at the desk.
Exactly, just set a timer. Thank you, Will Guy, LBC's tech guru, and Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. The time now is 11:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
LBC, where the announcement of the social media ban for under-16s has been very warmly greeted in most quarters, with caveats and reservations, not least worries about full-on implementation. Will Guyatt, I think, covering an awful lot of that territory. I don't remember the last time something that I believed to be controversial received such almost unanimous approval. Even I am a victim of UK media. I don't know why. Presumably because Keir Starmer has done it, they have to look for a negative. But I was under the impression that this was a much more contested idea than appears to be the case. And I'd be a little bit reluctant to say that based entirely upon this programme, but I heard Nick Ferrari say similar earlier this morning. It seems that any parent with even a cursory understanding of what is going on is going to welcome it. And the parents who don't have the cursory understanding are probably not feeling very strongly one way or the other, which leaves only people who aren't parents who can make relatively spurious, I don't want to be rude, but slightly simplistic and predictable arguments about freedoms and libertarianism and what have you, when they don't really recognise that the whole point about being a child is that you have fewer freedoms than an adult. That's the point. And I think something else upon which we could almost all agree would be that adults probably need some help in this universe as well now, because the dangers not just of what you are accessing, but the addictive nature of that access are becoming impossible to ignore. To which I have two responses: oil and tobacco. It doesn't matter that there is a worldwide consensus on something being bad. If the profits being made from it are big enough, they will fight tooth and nail to continue pumping it into the body politic, to continue pumping it into the air, to continue pumping it into your lungs, and in the case of social media, to continue pumping it into your children's brains. It doesn't, I'm going to say this again because so many people miss the point, or rather so many people have been persuaded by epic multi-billion-dollar lobbying industries, often masquerading as think tanks. It doesn't matter if every scientist on the planet agrees that it is absolutely rancid, they won't stop. They'll pay people to pretend that it isn't. They'll buy politicians to insist that there's no such thing as man-made climate change. They will move heaven and earth. They will fight tooth and nail to continue harvesting the profits of your grand's lung cancer, or of your child's asthma, or of, in this case, your child's mental turmoil, arrived at as a consequence of social media. George is in Nicosia in Cyprus. George, I think we've spoken before, looking at the note on the screen. Then I know why you're here. What do you want? What do you want to share with people?
James. You know what? First of all, I love speaking to you.
Thank you.
You're amazing. And but look, I mean, yes, I am just so overwhelmed with this outcome. I am now going to start speaking to children a lot more about how they're going to now help others, because you know what it is that these dangers of social media that, you know, of course, our son Christopher suffered with, who was attacked by predators, 50-day challenges, and, you know, he lost his life because of it. And the same, like us and all the other bereaved parents, who are now 32 of us in our group, we're chasing the same thing. And, you know, if we can't obviously help our children because they're up in the kingdom of heaven, but we could help all the other children in this world. And we're just so pleased that the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago heard us speak and is now going to deliver. And that's what we were so pleased with. Is keeping children away from the exploitation of the dangers of social media, because it's getting worse and worse by the day.
Well, you must have been in a very strange place in recent years. I know you lost Christopher in 2022, in March of 2022, and to be introduced in such hideous circumstances to the reality of what was going on, and then to sit there for 4 years, George, watching nothing, no change, no activity. I mean, I understand that you welcome today's announcement. But it must have been a really weird experience to know how dangerous it is and to see no action and little appetite for the kind of meaningful change that has finally come around.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's been killing us every single day because, every single day that, sun rises, we know, unfortunately, a lot more children are losing their lives. And not trying to attempt to try and get ends meet, and we can't. That makes it really frustrating. But you know what? It's a good start. Look, this is not the all and end of, because, we know that possibly a lot of children may not be able to follow that rule, but I'm going to message, this is a message to all the parents who listen to us right now, is to say basically, look, follow the rules, follow the law, and your child is saved. And that's one thing that I preach every day when I go to schools and presentations, and it's just keeping children away from these horrific dangers. And the thing is, you're talking to strangers. You don't even know who you're talking to. It's not someone tangible. It's someone that you just don't know, but who plays, they're your friends. But the chances are they're out there to do harm. And that's what's really scary about the whole thing.
I know that you and Areti have set up the Christoforos Charity Foundation as a legacy for your son, yes. And that is the work that you're describing now, going to schools and doing it. And I hesitate to take you back, so answer this question in whatever way you prefer. People listening to this, because with Christoforos, he sort of went almost overnight. You've described the last 50 days of his life as being evidence of epic personality change. What would you say, given your horrible experience, to parents of children of a similar age? He was 15 when you lost him. What should they be most concerned about? What should they be looking for? That kind of relationship with the closed door of the bedroom and the parent who thinks everything's okay. Yeah,
well, that's exactly it, James. The thing is that parents don't actually realise changes in characteristics. When a child is starting to pull back to themselves, not being talkative, not eating a lot, closing themselves up in their bedrooms, putting those earphones in their ears and either on their phone or playing online games, horrific games like Roblox and Fortnite. These games are horrific because they allow these predators to enter very easily. Now, the message to the answer to your question is parents need to have a very close encounter with their child. They need to be able to talk with them, ask them questions. When they hear them talking upstairs on their headphones, ask them who they're talking to. When they say it's just a friend, well, is it someone tangible? Is it someone you know? Is it someone that, you've seen? Is it a school friend? And if the answer to all of that is a no, then they have to come off that. They've got to get them away from their platforms. And it's just so important. It's really well put, and this legislation will help with that. Do you think that the intervention and the testimony of parents like you has influenced Keir Starmer? Look, no child is going to be very happy with what's going on now, okay, of course. No child. I mean, I saw a video earlier on. There's a lady in school who said, put your hands up to any child who is for this ban. But, of course, no hands went up because no child's going to be happy for something like that to go forward because it's going to change their entire livelihood that they think they have. However, look, I think it's going to have a massive impact. I mean, it's brought tears to mine and Areti's life, my wife's, and it's made us so overwhelmed. I've just called up Ellen and Mariano and Lisa, and I've just told them that, you know what, we are so joyed right now because the thing is that we have now scored, shall I call it, a goal in the next step. And our next step is to try and implement this law to the best possible. And one idea that I've been saying that I have is to do face recognition and ID recognition. In that way, children will not be able to come around the system. And any parent who is listening to this would say, you know what, I shall do that for my child.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get the children who are extremely, anxious. Oh, please, Mum, just do it for me. But no, they've got to stand by their guns because it's a safety for our children, and that's number one.
Nice. Beautifully put, George. Stay safe.
Thank you, James. God bless you all.
And you. It's 12 noon. And you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. More coverage of this issue, this legislation. And if I take anything away from it myself, having listened to George as well, of course, who went through the worst imaginable experience a parent can have when he lost his boy Christopheros in 2022 after he was contacted online by, to use George's word, predators. Anything to take away from this, it's think of it as the beginning of a process, not the end, which sort of flies in the face with a lot of political coverage and political analysis, doesn't it? We expect it to arrive oven ready, as it were, in front of us. But it can't, not with stuff that is literally designed to move with the times. Up next, it's Monday, so it must be a ceasefire.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:05 is the time. The fat lady may not be singing, but she's certainly clearing her throat. It would appear that another ceasefire is on the way, or an extension to the current one, and that this one may signal an end to hostilities in Iran, hopefully also in Lebanon, although, as has become common, Benjamin Netanyahu responded to positive noises emerging from negotiations between Iran and the United States of America by bombing, by attacking civilians in Beirut, launching a new round of attacks there. That's what happened last week, isn't it, when Trump was also criticising Netanyahu with conversations with reporters. Listen, it's the biggest story in the world, and it's also the weirdest, because I don't know how to talk about it anymore. I know, for example, that Donald Trump will claim a victory when he has not won anything. I know, for example, that Benjamin Netanyahu will probably not be bound by anything that Donald Trump tells him to do, and will probably continue with his attacks upon Lebanon, there being not a great deal left in Gaza for him to continue to attack there. I know that the deal, whatever it may be, will involve billions of dollars being released to Iran and promises to cease any attempts to develop a nuclear weapon, which is exactly what Barack Obama secured and Donald Trump set fire to. I know that the Strait of Hormuz is going to continue to impact upon the global economy, most obviously, but by no means exclusively through oil prices, for months after the passage is reopened. I know that it was only closed because of Trump and Netanyahu's attack. So they will be celebrating a return to roughly where we were 3.5 months ago, before he started a war that was supposed to take merely a couple of weeks. It's almost 4 months. Let's say 4 months ago. How do you acknowledge or recognise all of those moving parts? It will be, at the very, very best, it will be what was in place 4 months ago, with obviously thousands of deaths having been having occurred in the interim, thousands of people having been killed. Israeli strikes in Lebanon believed to have killed more than 3,700 people, including 240 children. About 1 million people have been displaced. We know that in Iran, 100 schoolgirls were killed by the US strike on the very first day of the war. All of these poor souls have perished. All of these people have died. American troops, Israeli troops, and the best case scenario is that things will revert to exactly where they were 4 months ago, which was a status quo not as good, not as safe, not as beneficial to the world as the one that was secured by Barack Obama during his administration. And that is why it defies analysis. The people in this country that cheerlead for Donald Trump will just go quiet for a while. Dick Littlejohn in the Daily Mail probably start writing about old episodes of The Bill. No, sorry, he's already done that. He'll probably start writing about old episodes of Crackerjack in this week's column. That would be great. Oh, those were the days. Crackerjacks, Friday, hey, pencil and pen or something. A crackerjack pencil. So because they can't ever, as with Brexit, which we'll also be talking about this week. These people are absolutely incapable of putting their hands up and saying, I'm an idiot. I got absolutely everything wrong. I was, probably in the case of Trump and Brexit, so completely seduced by the racism that I absolutely lost sight of the ball. So you're not going to have anything to push against when it comes to analysis. You're not even going to be able to do what I like doing on a daily basis and saying, let me show you why they're wrong. And then I run through it, not an opinion, just counting. And at the end of that process, you can say, oh, God, yeah, they are wrong. Or you can say, I don't care that they're wrong. I still really love the racism. And you can't really rely upon the experts, because although the experts, and you can rely upon them for some elements of what is going on, like what happens if the Strait of Hormuz is shut? Well, this happens and that happens. What happens if? But that's pretty much it, actually. What happens when the Strait of Hormuz reopens? Well, this happens and that happens, but it will not return to normal. Things won't improve, or at least the choke effect, the impact will continue for months afterwards. Iranian state media currently claiming that the deal will force Israel to withdraw from Lebanon. Does Donald Trump have the capability, the wherewithal, to tell Benjamin Netanyahu to withdraw completely from Lebanon? If he doesn't, what happens next? You don't know any of these things. And it's about $25 billion, the expected release of Iranian assets, as well as sanctions relief. So Iran arguably comes out of it better than it went into it, while Donald Trump, well, not even arguably, Iran, despite the loss of human life, which the regime in Iran doesn't seem to care about particularly, I'm talking about the loss of Iranian life, they're going to be coming out of it better than they went into it. So how do you have a phone-in about this kind of thing? I don't think anymore, I don't even think you listen anymore, but people who think Donald Trump is anything other than a deranged, lying idiot are worth talking to. That was one of the ideas I had. Have a conversation about what's changed. But people who have not yet realised that Donald Trump is a deranged, lying idiot are never going to realise that Donald Trump is a deranged, lying idiot. I don't know how that works. I don't know why that is true, but I don't think that this ridiculous war, which has done none of the things he claimed it would do. It hasn't toppled the Iranian regime. It didn't last a few weeks. It's left Iran enjoying more leverage over the international economy than they ever had before, and he's bottled it again, effectively, presumably because he doesn't want to go into the midterms with the war still raging. So anybody, which is why people like Dick Littlejohn in the Daily Mail won't be able to talk about it or won't be able to mention it, and will instead be writing about 25-year-old episodes of Crackerjack for a few weeks. So how do you have a conversation about something that is so completely bonkers? So completely and utterly bonkers. And that's presuming it sticks, which there's no guarantee it will. How many times has he announced a ceasefire? Roughly the same amount of times that he's announced the obliteration of Iran's military capability, which is roughly the same amount of times that he's announced that he will do terrible things to them if they don't fall into line immediately, which is about the same amount of times that he's announced, well, he's not actually going to do terrible things to them, despite the fact that they haven't fallen into line immediately, because he's changed his mind, because they're terrible people. It's a win, I think, for Iran in many ways, with that constant caveat that they've lost many people. Not as many as have been killed in Lebanon, of course, but again, it doesn't seem to be something that troubles either the White House or Benjamin Netanyahu or the Iranian regime unduly. In fact, the only thing upon which they could all seem to agree is that the civilian deaths don't matter. Don't matter. So what do you think has changed? What do you think has changed? A senior US official telling the news organisation Zetio that the plan is the same as it was months ago when the White House kept leaking that the president was going to declare victory. Just say that we won. It doesn't matter whether you did win or not. You will just keep saying Donald Trump won, America won, Donald Trump won. If we say it enough times, it will come true, won't it? And that was, I told you that weeks ago. I said that was what was going to happen. It'll end up worse than it was before. It will end up obviously and measurably worse than what was in place after Barack Obama negotiated the JCPOA. But he will march around like a pigeon playing chess, insisting that he won. Barack Obama has made it pretty clear that the likelihood of this deal being better than the one he negotiated is almost non-existent. And, of course, also acknowledged that chaos had been unleashed on the global economy. Characteristically diplomatic, Obama said, "It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place and worked for a long stretch of time before we, the United States, pulled out of it." A reference to Trump tearing up Obama's deal in his first term, which, in case you don't know this, left Iran free to enrich uranium. They started again to about 60%, which is close to weapons grade. So, what have you learned? Does that work? How much damage has this war done? And now we can make a list of targets. How much damage has this war done to Benjamin Netanyahu? I don't think it's done any damage to Donald Trump. I would love you to tell me that I'm wrong. I would love you to tell me, James, I've listened to you for years. I thought you were talking absolute gibberish about Donald Trump, but this engagement has made me realise that you were completely right all along and I never should have listened to the other people. I just don't think you exist. Do you think that person exists? I could deal with the abuse of the disabled journalist. I was comfortable with the boasting about being a sex offender. The felonies didn't really trouble me at all. Inciting the insurrection and then pardoning the people responsible for it who were baying for the blood of his own vice president. Lying absolutely endlessly and egregiously about the result of the 2020 election. All of that, I was fine with it all, James. But the war in Iran, that's really turned my head. I've got to admit now that he was a wrong 'un all along, and I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. That person doesn't exist, right? This is why it's such a weird thing to pick over or analyse. The person who would think, oh, Trump's all right. What was Dick Littlejohn saying? I wish he was running Britain. I've never been more ashamed to be British than when we didn't join in with this ludicrous war. So you're fine with the abuse of the disabled people, you're fine with the self-confessed sex offending, you're fine with the court case where he sued a woman who accused him of rape and lost, make of that what you will, you're fine with the lies about the election, you're fine with the pardoning of the people that committed the election, you're fine with all the felonies, you're fine with the hideous bullying of the Gold Star dead military veterans' family. You can't even begin to make a list of, but fine with all of that. Yep, still fine with that. Well, I've never been more ashamed to be British that we didn't go to war with this clown. And now today you wake up and you go, do you know what? I probably should have been a little bit slower to offer him my full-throated support. Nigel Farage, we should do everything we can to support him. Kemi Badenoch, we should do everything we can to support him. All gone quiet, all reverse, all change. So you can't. What do you do? How do you have a conversation about this? Can I do that as a phone-in? How do you have a conversation about this? 0345 6060 970. Is that asking me? Is that me asking you to do my job? How do we have a conversation about this? It's by far the most important story in the world. If your mortgage has gone up, if you've signed a new mortgage deal that's at a higher rate than you were expecting 6 months ago, it's Donald Trump's fault. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's fault. It's their fault. That's why. It's gone up. If your food bill, your fuel bill, your cost of living, all of that, it's gone up more than you were expecting. It's their fault. They did it. They did this. Benjamin Netanyahu, because he was desperate to cling on to power, desperate to stay out of court and therefore jail. Donald Trump, because reasons. Someone told him it'd be great. Someone sold it to him. If you listen to Marco Rubio, Benjamin Netanyahu persuaded him it'll be over by tea time and you can do a lap of honour claiming that you've done a better job of bringing peace to the Middle East than any other previous American president. Every single one of whom Benjamin Netanyahu had tried to persuade to attack Iran, but they all had the brains to tell him where to go. And to Donald Trump, who didn't have the brains to tell him where to go. I mean, what can you say with any certainty? The same thing you could say at the very beginning. Donald Trump will lose and he will claim victory. Or Donald Trump will end up in a situation that is worse or at the very best no better than the situation that the USA was in before with regard to Iran, and he'll claim a glorious victory. He'll claim a glorious, glorious victory. Israel has been hemorrhaging goodwill and public support right across the world since pretty much the moment it became clear that the response to the October the 7th atrocity was going to involve incalculably more deaths than the October the 7th atrocity involved. That's not an opinion, I'm afraid. That's counting, albeit that some people are still incapable of understanding how the human mind works when it watches death tolls rise. Has this damaged Israel any further than it had been damaged before? Has it seen a further hemorrhaging of goodwill and support to the entire country while the current regime remains in place? I don't know. And Iran, I mean, the Revolutionary Guard, a theocratic dictatorship, the worst kind of government that anybody who believes in freedom or decency can want to live under. They come out of it emboldened. They might have lost the last Ayatollah, but have you met the new one? It's his son. So, what has changed? What have you learned? Where has the most damage been inflicted? And I don't mean death tolls, because that would be Lebanon, which didn't really have anything to do with this war in the first place. It's just that Benjamin Netanyahu saw an opportunity while attention was directed to Iran to wade in there and try to do another Gaza. So what is the question? What is the conversation? What does it mean? What does it mean? The number you need is 0345 6060 973. And what I want you to do is this, okay? I want you to tell me what happened. Don't hold back on the grounds that what you have to say might be obvious. Maybe do hold back on the grounds that what you have to say is an absolutely crazy conspiracy theory. I think there's enough of that in the world without necessarily polluting this programme. But what has happened? And pick any element you want. You don't have to do the whole thing. You could pick the Strait of Hormuz and just tell us what has happened. Well, they did this, and that means that, which means this, which means that. And that will be something that we feel the consequences of until the middle of 2028. Because you know what you're talking about, which is something else that distinguishes you from Donald Trump. What has happened? You could come at it from the Israeli angle. You could talk about Benjamin Netanyahu's imminent corruption trial and the appalling deal he has done with the most hideous of people in order to stay in power. If you can keep Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in your cabinet, then there is no depth to which you will not stoop in order to save your own political hide. And they are the ones, many people argue, that have driven the attacks upon Lebanon, never mind the genocide in Gaza. What has happened? All right? Pick an angle or have a crack at the whole thing. All I've got is Donald Trump will claim victory even as everybody with a brain knows that he's lost. What have you got? What has happened? This is the most significant, internationally speaking, it is the most significant element of Donald Trump's second administration. By a country mile. Much more important than Venezuela, much more important than threats to Greenland, much more important than the abuses of NATO or the appalling libelling of the entire United Kingdom. What has happened? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It is, I think, more likely to be over by the end of this week than it has been at any other point when they've announced that it's about to be over. This one looks like it will stick with the constant Craig David caveat. Of course, it's a ceasefire on a Monday. You know the rest. So have a go at explaining what has happened. And the lenses through which you might want to look at that question are, what has changed in the world or indeed in the way you look at the world, and who or what has sustained the most damage? What has changed? What has been most damaged? 0345 6060 973. But overarching all of that, what actually just happened? Just 4 months. What happened? Hit the numbers now, you will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I heard a lot at the very beginning, but there was such disagreement, wasn't there, between different members of the diaspora, those who dreamt of a sort of Shah returning and thought that what Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu were doing was brilliant. And I think we politely suggested to them, maybe sit tight for a while, because I look at who you're talking about, look at who you're cheering. They're unlikely to end up delivering anything you want. But people wouldn't listen because passions run deep. I presume you've all realised now that you sold something of a pup, but I don't know. And then, of course, people who hoped that the engagement would signal a different kind of revolution in Iran, that it would actually create the circumstances needed for an internal revolution. That they have also had their hopes dashed. I don't know how much of an expert you need to be on the country or the region to have either seen or not seen that coming. But as soon as Donald Trump was in charge, or as soon as Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu got into bed together, it seemed pretty clear to me that the only people who were likely to benefit from it were Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu has, personally, albeit that his country has hemorrhaged even more goodwill and support in the process. Donald Trump hasn't, but that doesn't matter because he'll claim that he has. That's my takeaway. What's yours? Sam's in Enfield. Sam, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
So I think the first thing I would say is that Iran have learned a valuable lesson, which is that they don't need to enrich uranium to hold the world to ransom. Something that they probably knew, but now they 100% knew.
They hadn't proved it. They might have thought it, but they couldn't prove it.
And now they've proven it,
and
right?
now they've proved it. God, I hadn't thought of that, yeah.
So that's the first thing. They don't need the uranium. They've got something far more powerful than uranium. They can hurt us economically. I think the next thing that we've learned in this situation is that a superpower is struggling to defeat a modest power, and that a $35,000 drone has to be shot down by $1 million missile. And that's something that Ukraine is kind of teaching the Russians, right?
Yes.
So we don't have to spend billions and billions on defense like everyone says we do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, last week's conversation about the necessity of more defence spending was driven by people who have a much deeper knowledge of the defence world than either you or I do, and they are adamant we need. I mean, I'd tell you what I'd accept is if you said we need to spend it on very different things from what we've spent it on before. Sure. I don't know that I can join you in going all the way to saying we can cut our defence budgets massively as a consequence of what's happened in Iran. But
and then the other thing I think people have really learned is that there is a special relationship. It's one between. It's the one between the US and Israel. That's the only real special relationship. That's what the UK ambassador said. And I think the Americans are realizing, actually, I'm not sure there's much in it for us to have this relationship. And Trump is learning that it's actually the tail that's wagging the dog, and that Netanyahu is not going to say how high when Trump says jump. And that's a realization that I think he's having right now. I think that this 60-day ceasefire, it's not a peace deal, it's just a ceasefire for a framework. I think the Israelis will do whatever they can to scupper it. I think they'll carry on bombing Lebanon. I think they will do things that will enrage Iran, and they will be back to square one 60 days from now.
Obviously, I hope not, but history's on your side, isn't
history's on my side.
Recent history's on your side. And if we had to distill down to why, it would be because if Benjamin Netanyahu's self-interest is so completely overarching, then his self-interest would accommodate even a massive diminishment or even a severance of what you describe, and you're right, what I think the former or the current UK ambassador to the USA described as the only special relationship. In other words, Israel's interests are enormously and eternally served by this relationship with the United States of America, but in the very short term, Benjamin Netanyahu's interests may not be, in which case it's goodbye. It's good night, Vienna.
Yeah, and I think Trump is going to get a bloody nose at the midterm elections. I think Netanyahu is going to lose the election in October in Israel. I think he might even find himself in court because he's tried to get himself pardoned by the president, and that's not happened.
Something Donald Trump joined in with, didn't he? Which didn't look at all scripted, or as if he was reading out a note that he'd been given in advance by Netanyahu.
And I think where this all started, if people can remember that far back, is people took to the streets in Iran because the value of their currency had collapsed. And it had collapsed because of sanctions put on them by the West. And now what will happen to them? They'll probably get sanctions relief. They'll probably get their assets unfrozen.
I think the reports suggest that sanctions released and $25 billion worth of unfrozen assets. So an absolute disaster from Trump's point of view, a disaster from Israel's point of view. Yeah. And if we accept that the Revolutionary Guard in the Iranian regime is not particularly troubled by the death toll in Lebanon, actually, that may not be true, actually. Well, it's more about the politics of their support for Hezbollah, isn't it, than the actual death toll in Lebanon. But Iran will be the ones who could most objectively and credibly claim some sort of victory or triumph.
You know, there are no winners when there's a war.
No, well, exactly.
That's the problem. And the thing is, there was absolutely no need for this, right, at the very beginning, because there was a perfectly good deal in place that the imbecile that is Donald Trump ripped up. Yeah. And is now thinking, actually, that was a pretty good deal. But
he can't think that. He's incapable because it was negotiated by a black man.
Yeah, whose middle name happens to be Hussein, as he always points out, right?
That's the fella, for reasons that you don't really need to speculate on. It's obviously an attempt to other and to demonise. Crikey, I don't think Sam's killed the phone in stone dead, because I said there are many, many angles at which and also, of course, as ever on this programme, you can challenge anything that he's just said. But that initial opening, I hadn't thought of that for a minute. Had you? Iran have discovered, or at least have had it confirmed, they don't need to enrich uranium to hold the world to ransom anymore. They've shown what they can do. This is what Ash in Northampton, who of course used to be in the Merchant Navy and now trains merchant seamen, this is what he was explaining to us from the very beginning. And that one of the main reasons why Benjamin Netanyahu had been unable to persuade any previous US president to attack Iran was because of the Strait of Hormuz. Only Donald Trump was stupid enough to believe whatever it was that Benjamin Netanyahu told him, which would be either, oh, that's not true, you don't need to worry about the Strait of Hormuz, or don't worry about that, it'll be over so quickly that we'll be in charge of it by tea time tomorrow. Whether Netanyahu knew or cared what was likely to happen in Iran, or indeed to the world economy, is a question for future biographers, because all he really cares about at any moment, in any cycle, whether it's political, electoral or news, is Benjamin Netanyahu. And, of course, all of the people who have gone a little quiet now but have spent much of the last few years accusing anybody criticising Benjamin Netanyahu's regime of anti-Semitism, I'm afraid, only in many ways have themselves to blame for the hemorrhaging of goodwill and public support that Israel is now suffering. Although, for the record, not from me, or from, indeed, this programme, because to separate the country from the regime is as important in Israel as it is in the United States of America. Here's Matt Hewitt with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Very strange one. Have you got a minute? Can I indulge a little in a bit of background, just in terms of what I do with you every day? When this kicked off, it was an extraordinary experience to be presenting this programme on this radio station, because the amount of traction we were getting in the United States of America via YouTube mostly was the greatest we've ever seen. I worried at some point that the kind of sense we were getting with regards to listener numbers was being skewed slightly by the number of people tuning in on the other side of the Atlantic, which of course doesn't hit my radar. It doesn't affect my radar. But then the radars came in and it turned out we were going great guns everywhere. So that was a worry that was quickly dealt with. But the reason for that was because we could be completely honest here. We're not owned by Donald Trump donors. You know, we don't have to bend the knee to the ludicrous inhabitant of the White House. We don't have to pretend that his comments about the 2020 election are anything other than egregious lies. We don't have to dress up his attempts to incite an insurrection on January the 6th are anything other than attempts to incite an insurrection on January the 6th. We're not cowed or frightened, or more importantly, in the context of American media, we are not owned by members of the Trump project. And I think that was why we reached parts that we hadn't previously reached. And it should have continued for longer. You always get a bit of war fatigue, or foreign policy fatigue, foreign affairs fatigue, we should probably call it. So it might be the most important thing happening in the world, but you can't really talk about anything every day. The only things that we've ever talked about every day, I think, are COVID and Brexit. And they were obviously both happening right here, right now. This is not. So there was a weird tail-off, but it wasn't just a tail-off. It was as if we went overnight from wanting to talk about it endlessly with everybody to not having anything to say about it at all. And I have wrestled with this, puzzled over this, endlessly, actually. Because why is it not like it was when it started? And the answer, I think, we have worked out together, which is you can't... there comes a point where you can't analyse madness. You've got a ceasefire announced on a Monday. You've got the complete obliteration of the Iranian regime announced on a Tuesday. You've got threats to completely obliterate the Iranian regime, brackets, which you said you've already obliterated, close brackets, if they don't do what you want immediately. You've got a retreat from the threat to obliterate the Iranian regime, brackets, which you said you've already obliterated, close brackets, if they don't do what you've done immediately, to another claim that you've just completely obliterated them. So we've obliterated them, we will obliterate them, we haven't obliterated them, but if they don't do what we want, we will obliterate them. We've announced a ceasefire because we're geniuses, we're going to attack them again tomorrow. Those are 5 points, so whichever way you dress it up, which have just come round again and again and again and again and again, like a Calvin Harris track. And that's why you can't analyse it, isn't it? Retreat, rinse, repeat. Retreat, rinse, repeat. Retreat, defeat, attack, ceasefire, threat, leverage. And it's bonkers. So we lost the ability, with the exception of Ash in Northampton, who was coming at everything from a maritime perspective and therefore was dealing constantly with facts regardless of noise. We haven't really been able to do anything. And in some ways, we still can't. So all we can do now is say, what's changed? And I think Sam in Enfield provided an absolute masterclass in how to answer that question. And if you don't like what's changed, have a crack at what happened. What's happened? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. Jamie points out the other thing we don't have to worry about is maintaining or retaining access to the White House. That's very true too. Although there are plenty of journalists, well, there are still some journalists in America managing to do incredibly good work in the face of incredible opposition, up to and including being demonised and targeted by the government itself for the crime of telling the truth, for the crime of simply repeating or reflecting what has been said by the president or done by the president. Mello, what a lovely name, is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mello, what would you like to say?
Hey, how you doing, sir? Good morning.
Good morning to you. What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to answer the question about what's changed. And personally, I feel like the only thing that's really changed is Trump and his family have gotten richer and people have gotten poorer. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And of course, you can't, gloss over the fact that thousands of people have died because of what he wanted to do here, which was enrich himself and his family.
I don't know about that. I don't think we'll argue about it because neither of us can prove the other one wrong. I think that has been a happy side effect of what was originally undertaken for different reasons. I don't think he went into it to make money. I think he went into it because he'd bought the idea that he'd somehow be able to secure a glorious victory and get one over on Barack Obama. But as the longer it's gone on, obviously people around him have made enormous sums of money by essentially betting upon whatever announcement he was due to make next with, we can only presume, some foreknowledge of what he was likely to say next. How's it playing in North Carolina? I mean, is it a topic of constant conversation? Is it something that has salience? Or you just heard me wanging on before you came on the radio, Mello. Has it got that sense of fatigue? Is that even if people thought it was a great idea to start with, and there weren't many of them, they've gone quiet now and everybody else is just sort of waiting for it to peter out?
Yeah, I think there is a large sense of fatigue, and we don't really talk about it much. There are a couple of people that I work with who... Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, yeah, there are a couple of people who I work with who, may have voted for Donald Trump, and I don't, hold these kind of things against people. Politics are politics.
Yeah.
But they definitely don't talk too much about what's going on currently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's out of sight, out of mind. And it's not going to change anyone's mind. No one's going to wake up having put up with all the stuff that's gone before and say, do you know what? Maybe this guy is a bit of a bad guy. I should have spotted it sooner, but Iran has really made me realise it now. I can't see that happening.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Nobody likes to be wrong, and they would have to admit that they were wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think in regards to his plan to, self-aggrandize himself, I think that's part of it, but there are a lot of military contracts that went to people related to Trump and people around his family. Like Jared Kushner's younger brother got a $20 billion defense contract. That's not something that you just come up with on the spur of the moment. You kind of have to have that thing in the works. You know what I mean?
I guess I wasn't aware of that, but I'll take your word for it until someone corrects me or corrects you. But
I think the company is Arduril Industries or something similar to that, if you wanted to, fact check. But there are other companies that his son is on the board of that have had defense contracts precisely because of this war, like drone contracts and things like that. And I mean, this isn't something new to America. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, I do, but it's new for it to be so out in the open, for it to be so barefaced. People always make
so blatant.
People always make money out of wars, but they don't really do it in daylight. I mean, maybe I'm a sweet summer child, Mello, and you can laugh at my naivety, but I actually don't believe that's why they undertook. I don't think that's why it started. I think that and you give me doubt perhaps when you say that it's unlikely this deal could have been put in place on the hoof, on the fly, but I just think he undertook it for reasons of ego, and then the opportunities for self-enrichment kicked in.
You get them both, you know what I mean? Like, the best of both worlds for people who think like that.
And a $2 trillion hit to the world economy, or thereabouts, including, as you began by reminding us, ordinary Americans who have been hit in the purse by this. They've been hit in the wallet, and yet I don't know how much of your media will be telling him the truth, actually, or how much of the media will be saying the reason why the cost of gas is going up at a rate of knots is because of Donald Trump's war in Iran. Is it going to affect the midterms?
I think it will have a slight effect, but there are things happening now that are going to affect how and when people can vote. You know what I mean? So even if he was going to take a big hit in the midterms, he's already got the infrastructure in place to say, these people can't vote, don't send in these mail-in ballots. It's going to be a very interesting and maybe very consequential midterm election.
Good Lord, indeed it is. And of course, even if the results do go against him, he'll simply claim that they can't be trusted. In fact, I think we can all agree the only elections that Donald Trump thinks have been conducted in a fair and transparent fashion are the ones that he wins. If he loses, then something bad has happened. If he wins, then everything is hunky-dory. Just don't mention the fact that the electoral system, the methods of counting, the practices, the people, all of those are exactly the same in the elections that he loses as they are in the election that he wins. Just let him continue with his ludicrous lies. Which is why, of course, the Trump cheerleaders in this country, led by Dick Littlejohn of the Daily Mail, have had absolutely nothing to say about him or Iran for the best part of 4 months. But he's written some cracking stuff about 25-year-old episodes of the bill. It's 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Rob's been in touch. He says the USA have lost their military hegemony. Hegemony. It's definitely not hegemony, Keith. I don't know what you're talking about. The USA have lost their military hegemony in the Middle East and trust from the countries and old allies there. The petrodollar global clout seems shakier than ever before. Julio writes, good morning, James. My 12-year-old child said today, Dad, did you notice that since the war in Iran started, not much has been said about the Epstein files? And now the World Cup is on, so Trump's decided to end it because people will be focusing on the World Cup for a while. What a bright lad. And more on that end. I think, what have you learned as opposed to what's changed is that Trump and Netanyahu are peas in a pod, and they will be motivated at every single turn by self-protection and self-interest. So impunity plus the kind of self-advancement, self-protection, self-interest that you probably need sociopathic tendencies to execute. Probably, but I don't have the diagnostic tools to say that with any certainty. Speak of the devil, Ash, this could be it, mate. This could be the swan song. It could all be over. Peace reigns. We all get wet. Ash has been steering us effortlessly through the complexities of events in the... You can steer a boat. He's been manning the tiller while steering us effortlessly through events in the Strait of Hormuz, and he's won a lot of fans and admirers and a lot of gratitude from me in the process. So I'll go straight in with the big question of the day. What's changed? I mean, working on the presumption that it is over, but as I said at the outset, I think the fat lady is clearing her throat rather than singing. But anyway, whether it is or not, what's changed? What has actually changed as a consequence of this?
Good afternoon, James. Okay, I'm currently working on the proviso that the era of open globalization is over.
Wow.
That's my sort of thesis at the moment that I'm currently sort of writing and working towards. We've had an era since the end of the Cold War, essentially, where we have had unrestricted access to trade routes with no need to secure them via military means, which is basically what globalization is. It's securing trade routes without using the Navy. I think we're now in a position where that's coming to an end. And we're going to have to start looking at the way that we are conducting world maritime trade in a very different way. That's I think, where we are in terms of... I think this has been coming for a while.
So this has been true for hundreds of years?
Yes. I mean, you can go all the way back to Byzantine era for trade routes and being secured by maritime. And,
I wasn't going to go back that far, despite actually having an A-level in Byzantine history, as you may know. But I was thinking more of kind of, 18th and 19th century, and our Navy being the reason why we enjoyed such extraordinary prosperity in many ways.
Yes, but then it wasn't our Navy as such, was it? It was in sort of... entities such as the East India Company, which was a private company, which had its own navy. So, that's been the slow progression away from the navy and naval power into private hands, which then shifted even further into private hands when we moved into globalization. I think we're going to have to start seeing a shift back. And it's been coming for a while. The whole issue with the Bab al-Mandeb, which has been going on for 2-3 years now, with sort of Houthis and bombs. I mean, you can even. I mean, there is an argument that I'm currently working on that even the age of piracy from Somalia has led inexorably towards this.
So back in the day, they would have wiped out these problems. The commercial entities, whether backed by state military or private military, they would have wiped out things like the Houthis and they could probably struggle to wipe out Iran, but they could have taken off the board the rogue players interfering and disrupting trade. And the calculation would always be that any price is worth paying to keep the money flowing.
Well, that's literally what a privateer is, isn't it?
Yes, exactly that.
The stock definition of a privateer is you're basically taking out the enemies of the crown that you happen to be working for.
Yeah.
Under a license to basically legalise piracy, and whatever money you can make out of that is yours.
So why isn't that happening?
Because who has a private army that can do that?
And why couldn't a public army do it? Why couldn't the states do it? Why couldn't the United States do it? I'm thinking more about the Houthis and the Iranians.
No, I know. It's because if you look at where they are...
Yeah.
Again, this comes back to, if you attack the Houthis, who are you really attacking?
Yeah, of course.
You're attacking Iran in a different country, which is Yemen.
And so it's weird, isn't it? Because it's atomized. So, I mean, it's the era of sea battles is definitely behind us. The era of tank battles is probably close to extinct as well. And this is what the new reality looks like.
Yeah, and you can tie that back to the defence arguments. Like, I'm not in the rooms with the defence people, obviously, when they're going through this, but you've had an era for the last 30 years of being able to downscale things like the Royal Navy and allow it to atrophy. I mean, my old branch is the Royal Fleet Auxiliary.
Yes.
When I joined, we had 16, 17 ships, loads of people. We're now down to maybe 4 or 5 that can actually physically go and sail.
Yeah.
And that loss of capability was, they were kind of okay with it.
Because we all thought history was over. Francis Fukuyama told us history was over.
Yes, and now we're in a position where everything's shifting, and I think we're going to start seeing more of a... It's an interesting way you put the money, though. That's the question.
Yeah.
Does it go into digital? And this is all of last week that I was fascinated to sit and listen to, because do you put it into the digital to try and get it at the source, or do you put it into 3D printers on ships with drones that just suicide mission one way and take out anything that's threatening the shipping? I don't know. Like that'll be an interesting side note to see what happens. But
I look forward to reading your conclusions. But what we've done is what has happened is a recognition that the universe or the world is now a place where commercial interests will probably have to be defended by commercial interests.
Which would be a very bleak place to be. If we go back to a time when we had essentially privateers or legalized private armies. I mean, think of everything that's happened in the last 10 years with the Russian private armies that have been roaming around Africa.
Yes.
You know, I don't think anybody would see that as a positive net good in the world.
So Ben comes at it from a similar angle, actually, although he says Trump has shown the world that the United States is a paper tiger. He can't control Putin, he can't control Netanyahu, he can't defeat the IRGC, he can't open international waters, and China will be watching, probably thinking that Taiwan is undefended. Trump has shown the world how weak he actually is, but he's done more than that, hasn't he? He's shown the world how much the world has changed.
Yeah, and you can't put your faith in, you know, everything remaining open, and there you go. There's the one takeaway. This is the death of complacency.
The death of complacency and the rise of impunity at the same time. So you and Sam bookend this conversation, and you're both brilliant. And he suggested that this means that traditional defence spending is no longer necessary. Just a quick response to that idea.
Well, you're still going to need hulls, you're still going to need people. The question is, what are those people doing? Are they sending the hulls to sea to then, you know, just try and defend conventionally, or are they sending the hulls to sea to, I don't know, like I say, maybe 3D print stuff there?
No, I get it. It's a complete game changer. And if Ukraine hadn't already demonstrated elements of that to us, then this business would have done. Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know we'll talk again. I'm only teasing. But if this is the beginning of the end of Donald Trump's adventures in Iran, then thank you for all the help you've provided us with understanding them, up to and including the last few minutes. It's coming up to 12:59. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm not the only one. I just glanced at my inbox, and I was not the only one who suddenly had a little shiver at the thought of Elon Musk having his own private army. If you missed any of today's show, and I mean of soldiers, not just of online racists, if you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from this show every day. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, Simon Marks has surrendered the seat back to its original inhabitant, Tom Swarbrick, who's back from his holidays, and Sheila Fogarty is here.
James O'Brien on LBC.